Good morning, everyone. Welcome. So excited for you to join us today on our Women of Wealth Summit. I'm Holly Woods Gray, and my I'm co-hosting with Allie Ramo. Go ahead, Allie.
Hey, I'm Allie Ramo, co-host of Women of Wealth, and we've got some amazing speakers today. So at 9 o'clock, we've got India Kinney Stearns, and she's going to be she's got 22 years, I believe, of industry entertainment experience. And at 9:30, we've got Talena Hanley. She's the founder of Girly Garage. And so I think she's been growing Girly Garage for over 5, maybe 10 years. We'll have to ask her. And then Kate Payne, she's your go-to LinkedIn expert and all things PR. Why don't you tell them about Stephanie and Sandra?
So Stephanie, it's so funny because when we were doing the lineup for this show, Jill and I had met with Stephanie a while ago about some stuff that she's doing for female college athletes, and so former and present. And so Jill hadn't realized, Jill is our VP of marketing. Jill did not realize that Stephanie and I had known each other for about 14 years. So we were pregnant at the same time. Jackson and her daughter Paisley are 1 week apart. Jackson's 1 week older than her. So whenever we're in Coronado, she lives here in Vegas, but we hardly ever see each other in Vegas unless we're at a basketball game or something. However, her mom and the lady who's like my mom, Jenny, they live next door to each other. So I see them whenever they're in Coronado. And then we have Sandra Yancey, founder and CEO of eWomen Network. Sandra is one of my mentors and coaches. Right now, I'm doing a mastermind program that consists of Sandra and her husband, Kim, and their daughter, Brianna. And it's just a high-level mastermind that's really been able to take my business to the next level. So we're really looking forward to the lineup.
So for people who have never heard about Women of Wealth and are just popping in, how did Women of Wealth get started, Holly? I will tell you a little bit of a background. I started as Holly's assistant, and I was doing a lot of the marketing and media for Holly, and she had already had Women of Wealth for, 5 years prior to that. It started with our agency, Appreciation Financial, and it was really built to bring the women together within the agency, and now it's growing outwards. We're building our Women of Wealth community with women all over the US. Probably all over the world. I know with the podcast, we're reaching other areas, which is really cool to see. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. As I said, I was starting as Holly's assistant. I ended up getting my license, really liking financial services, and ran with it. And so it's really an honor. Holly has felt like a mentor to me for the past 5 years, and now sitting next to her and getting to co-host Women of Wealth has been super fun. And so I'm really excited about our event today.
So I'm excited about it too. And I just had one of our speakers that needed the link. So like any live event, we may have some snafus that we have to fix. So bear with us. We haven't done a live event in a while. And so we are working out the kinks. So technology is our friend today. As Allie mentioned, I've been in the financial services industry for about 14 years now, and then 22 overall, because before that I was doing some other business. I was in the mortgage industry for a while. So those fall under the realm of financial services as well. So I was on the lending side, which was very interesting, and it's a very great transition into what we do now. However, we started Women of Wealth 10 years ago, and actually January was our 10-year anniversary. And so initially we started out as the Women's Initiative for Appreciation Financial, the insurance company that I represent and that Allie represents. And we started out because we didn't have any women at the top level in our company. And so over the first 5 years of Women of Wealth, we hosted summits, we did coaching, we did retreats, live retreats, and we really were able to help develop some of the female leadership within Appreciation Financial that are still with us today. And then moving forward during COVID, we shifted our focus to being online, doing these virtual summits, and me interviewing different people. As things happen, partnerships change. So, when Allie was my assistant and then coming into the business, I thought, what a great way for us to share what the millennial financial journey is, what the Gen X financial journey is, and how to create a money mindset that is really going to help you, our listeners, develop and create that wealth that they're looking to create in their life. So that kind of brings us to today. Some of the speakers that you're going to see today, I've known for a long time. India was one of our first speakers at Women of Wealth retreat, and I got to know her and her story, and you're just really going to love her. We had a little preview yesterday during our tech check, and you're really going to love how she's so she's just really, really a magnetic personality, and I just adore her. So we are looking to kick off here in just a minute, but we are going to give you a little bit more information about why we even need a Women's Day. So, Allie, you remember me telling you that Jackson last year, he asked, Mom, why do we need a Women's Day?
Yes, I'm dying.
I'm driving him to school last year on Women's Day, which is tomorrow, actually, March 8th. And he said, Mom, what's going on? Why do we need an International Women's Day? And I'm like explaining it to him, in different jobs and whatnot, women don't have equality, in different places in our lives and the poverty level and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, I don't get it, Mom. I don't think we need an International Women's Day. You're a boss and you have other bosses that are women in your life. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. But that's not how it is around the world and even around the United States. So we really hope that today you hear something that changes your business or whatever it is that you do that will catapult you into having your children say, we don't need a Women's Day. Because, the statistics show that it's going to take us quite a while to get that gender parity that we talk about, but we can only control the people that are around us. And so that's what I like to do every single day. And, we are going to talk more about this with our guests, but both Allie and I are married to very strong personality, very strong men. And we need them in our lives in order to fulfill this mission that we have of helping women create wealth.
Holly, I don't know if you know, but as I was debating on whether to jump into Appreciation Financial and I was on the fence, I've come from a family with they have great pensions. They're covered with Social Security. They have that security. And entrepreneurship was just never a thought. As a kid, I always thought about creating different businesses or different gadgets. I always had like an inventor's mindset, but I never nourished that side of me. And it wasn't until Dylan went to one of the conventions with me and he looked at me and he's like, you could totally do this. And I was still your assistant at the time. I don't even think it was a point where we had talked about getting my license. I think it was the first convention. And I looked at him and I was kind of like, you're crazy. Like, I never want to do this. I was getting my holistic health coaching certification. And, I was very focused on what I wanted to do. And then he planted that seed in me and he saw a vision before I did. And you saw the vision before I did. And then eventually it snowballed. And then by the second convention, I'm like, yeah, totally. And I think I might have been an agent by then at that point because conventions once a year. So seed was planted. And I think that so that's in February. I think that April is when I got my license. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think we need that. We need the men in our lives that are advocates and allies. And, the saying used to be like behind every strong man is a strong woman, right? But it's actually the opposite goes as well. It's like, there's no way that the personality that I have, the business that I have, I would be anywhere near where I am now without the support and love of my family. And that really includes Bobby. He really is my hero and he really does pick the pieces up when I'm not around. And even when I am around and I need somebody to pick the pieces up, because sometimes it is hard to stay strong all day long, I think India is going to talk a little bit about how we're emotional beings, us women, and we need that strength behind us to really hold us up, especially when we don't always have that. So we juggle a lot, and it's great that we have this platform to be able to talk about it and just talk about some of the challenges and some of the solutions that we might have right at our fingertips. So.
Yes. So this Women's Day, we are not here to bash men, but to bring up women. And I think that's really cool. And that's a really important distinction. And definitely India, we've chatted about it yesterday. So I'm excited to have her on and go into that in detail about really lifting women up. And it's not about pulling men down. We definitely need the men in our lives. It's that yin yang or that female male balance. You definitely can't hide that.
So I think India must be on the test line that we had. I'm going to send Jill her phone number right now, and have her get her on, because she said she's backstage. However, I don't think Jill sees her. So we are going to keep on rolling. So then, our speaker after India will give her a great introduction as well. However, I'm really excited to hear what she has to say. So this year's International Women's Day theme is accelerate action. And so for me, one of the things that I am excited to hear about is how can we get more accelerated? How can we make sure that our cars are in a place where it can take us everywhere we want to go? I know early on in my life, whenever I had different cars, I didn't quite love them and pay as much attention to them as I do now, because I didn't realize what a resource I need to do all the things that I do in a day. So your car can be a resource for you, and it can get you from where you want to be, where you want to go, and where you need to be. And I'm just excited to hear about her journey as well.
Yeah, I think it's cool that, in different ways, women feel empowered. I mean, you've heard probably on social media about women walking in dark garages. You know how to hold your keys a certain way so that you can defend yourself against someone if they come attack you. That's just one of the things that women think about on a day-to-day basis, walking to their cars safely. I There was a video Talena posted a few days ago, and I didn't even think about this, but she said, women or men with bags, that, when the weather's nice, your windows are rolled down and you've got your purse in the passenger seat. This actually happened to her. Some stranger ran by her car, picked up the purse out of her car, and ran.
Oh my goodness.
And so she's just talking about, just the safety of your vehicle, not only your vehicle, but like you within your vehicle. She's been doing some really cool things. And we were connecting on, educating teenage women about, if they get a flat tire and how to solve that rather than waiting on the side of the road. And she does a lot of education within schools. And it was funny that I said, I've got a lot of connections at one of my high schools. I'd love to connect you. And I told her what high school, and she's like, oh, I'm already working with them. And I was just so excited about that. So I'm really excited to hear more about Talena, and all the other guest speakers. I met India yesterday. But other than that, I've never met any of the others. So it'll definitely be a
You've
good
met
day.
Sandra.
Yeah, I have met her. Yeah. But I love hearing. I feel like I hear something new from her every single time. She is a great speaker. And I actually did get to sit next to her at the eWomen lunch last year, which was really nice.
So one thing that I'm going to recommend that you do, Allie, is send Talena's contact information to Jill. I'm just texting Jill all of the speakers' phone numbers. It's okay. I think that India has it figured out. So we always say at a live event that technology is our friend, because you never know when we're going to be, on the wrong link or something like that. I have done that before. I've been on a Zoom meeting. I'm like, where is everyone? And they're like, we're here. And I'm like, no, you're not. So I've definitely done that before. So I would love for us to go ahead and bring India in so we can just have her drop all those nuggets like she was doing yesterday during our test.
Hey, y'all. Listen, I just like to make an entrance. That's what it was. I knew the entire time that I was on the wrong link, and I was like, I just want to see how they work it out. Just
Well,
let us
we got it figured out right on time as well. So, India, why don't you just share with our audience a little bit about you and your journey and how you got where you are now?
Oh my gosh, that's a big question, Holly. How long
I
do
know.
we have? No, well, as CEO of All Things Media, that was a long journey to get to. Ultimately, my background for 20 plus years has been a television network executive. And what that means is when you see a show on any given network, let's say HBO, VH1, there are executives who are sort of managing all of that content, and there are content creators who pitch to me. And it's my job to see if, okay, does that show work for the brand? Does that work for our audience? Can it, create, viewership, i.e. dollars, you know what I mean? So we're talking about women of wealth. And that's been my job for 20 plus years. Since then, I decided to then turn those 20 plus years of experience and relationships and resources into my own company, where I consult with various networks, television production companies and studios, where I oversee individual projects, or I will consult on development and strategy for the network. And it's been great. This past couple years, my industry has gone through a lot of changes, but even with that, I think there's always hope, you know what I mean? But ultimately, that's kind of where All Things Media was birthed. So basically, my company, we develop, we produce, we package projects. I partner with producers to help get their projects sold. And so it's sort of like a one-stop shop for all things content creation.
Well,
And
that is so, I'm so excited where you are now. I mean, you and I have known each other now for almost 10 years. And I just love that you are doing what you love to do. When we chatted yesterday, we just had, I mean, you were just telling us exactly how it was. And one of the things that we added to the question, and I want to before we jump into these main questions, I really want to talk about working closely with your husband, even though you guys aren't necessarily in the same business. Men can be an ally in our lives. And I think we need to remember that, especially those of us that have one in our home or three in their home like you do, right? So let's talk about how we can cultivate that support and that collaboration within the home and those male allies that support us in the office or at work as well.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is such a great question. And I can't thank you enough for even bringing that up, because I think we have come to a little bit of a fork in the road as it relates to culture and our relationship with men. And I think that we have sort of, it's sort of like they say, throw out the baby with the bathwater, which I hate that saying, but I kind of get it. It's like you have this amazing gift in men. You know what I mean? Like they are, one thing that my husband always says is like, I don't know how you do what you do. You have so many balls up in the air and you're catching them. He's like, but sometimes you just got to slow down. And the thing is, with men, they're very focused. They're like one stop shop. Like, okay, I'm going to get this and I'm going to just drive it home. Like all this multiple stuff happening, I can't do it. And I think that's how God created us, where we're able to be moms and, we're able to be in the boardroom and do all of the things. And men are just really, really focused on one thing and they do it really well. And so there are times where, when I'm working and he'll call, he's like, babe, I know you got it, but you're about to burn out. So maybe you should just focus on that one thing, peel back. And it's great because they see things we don't. They see things in a different way, the same way we don't. And the beauty is, and I think in any relationship, it doesn't matter. When you're able to see someone's strengths and you're able to apply that to some of your weaknesses and vice versa, that makes for an amazing partnership. Be it marriage, be it a leader in a company, that is the secret sauce to any success. And so when you're looking at it from a husband's point of view, he calls me on the carpet a lot, right? Like I said, he sees things that I don't. And I think we have to pull back sometimes and say, what is the intention here? Like, if these are people that love you, that want to see the best for you, when he's seeing things in me that I don't see, as opposed to me being defensive, it's like, wow, babe, you love me. You see that I'm about to run off a cliff, even though I think I got it. Let me lean in and listen. And so he's just very that steady voice. I'll tell you one quick story. What I love about him too is that he does love me in all my flaws, right? And I remember when I was really, really working around the clock. Like, I mean, when you're an executive, it's like you're on the clock. There's shows producing all over the world and you're getting calls, right? And I remember I was coming into the house I had my phone like this. I had my bags like this, and I'm coming in, and he's been at home. You know, he picked up the kids from school. He started dinner. That's our thing. Like he'll start dinner and I'll finish it, you know, and I'm barking orders. I'm on the phone. How the audacity of me, right? But I'm in my work mode, right? So I come in and I'm like, yeah, oh, what did you do your homework? Did you do this? Babe, did you get that? 1 second. Okay, yeah. And so one day he said, okay, he takes the phone. He's like, she'll call you back. He says, so now this is what I want you to do. I want you to walk outside. I want you to come in. But before you come in, I need you to take off CEO. I need you to come in and say, I'm a wife and a mom, and I'm going to live in the moment. He was so calm with it, right? And had I been certain women, they would have been like, who do they think they are? And you don't tell me. It's like, no, he's loving me. And I put my phone down. I walked in that with humble pie and I said, hey guys, how was your day? Tell me about your day. Babe, how's the food? Do you need help? What do I need? Like completely. And so it's just those things that we have to recognize in us and being able to manage that thing and being intentional about it. Because otherwise it's going to be a recipe for chaos no matter what you do.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby and I have had those moments too. I used to commute and I'd get home and I'd be like, I want to know everything that was going on over the week. You know, we talk on the phone maybe for 10 minutes at night or whatever. So I jump in there and he's like, babe, the kids are alive. They made it to and from school every single day. They ate. They may not have had salad with every meal, but they ate. You know, and I'm like, okay, I can dial it back a little bit.
So funny.
And we had just talked about how my husband played a huge role in me getting my license and even doing this business. So God bless you to the strong men in our lives. And I think you hit the nail on the nail on the head when you were talking about, you know, instead of being defensive, to just accept that. And I think that is a powerful shift that would change a lot of relationships, that if you just took a pause and a deep breath and thought about how is this coming from a loving perspective, that would change a lot of relationships. So talking about perspective, how has the media narrative around women and wealth been shaped, and how can we shift that perspective?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I've had so many projects even come my way about financial literacy and health and women and this idea of like, you know, we don't have an understanding about how to spend money or how to balance a checkbook or how to manage it. And you know, and what's funny is I have been one of those people who didn't do very well, my husband would say, for sure, in terms of spending. But the thing is that I think I'm hoping it's starting to change. You know, I feel like women are like, such as yourselves, with women of wealth, just stepping up and saying, listen, we're smart. We've taken finance classes. We're doctors. You know, we have PhDs in this thing. Like, we know just as much as anyone else. And I think part of our superpower too is being able to manage so many things. And so being able to find those loopholes, being able to find where the white noise is in terms of how to fill those gaps and how to give that knowledge and expertise to other women who just didn't have the literacy, I think is great. And I really do see more women stepping up to the plate and saying, no, we know a lot, and let us help you, let us teach you. And it's been phenomenal. I mean, my financial planner, you know, is a woman, and she is smart and she is on it. And I love too, because she's leading into things that mean to me, something to me, even in terms of how I invest, you know, things that speak to me as a woman, as a mom, as a wife, and just seeing it from that lens, I think is a beautiful example of the power of women in wealth, you know, like knowing where those dollars need to go, how to invest, how we balance from our perspective, and what means the most to us, I think is important.
I do. I mean, I think the shift is happening. I do really think it is because there are a lot more women who are in this industry now, and there's a lot more women that are. So it used to be women were in the home office. They'd be the customer service agent or whatever.
Right.
But now they're out there being the producer, the salesperson, and they're able to connect with women differently. You know, I remember I had a client one time and she's like, "Oh yeah, I really trust the guy that I'm with." I'm like, "Is it your husband?" You know, like, what kind of funds are you in? You know, she had no idea what she was even putting her money into. And just taking that moment to say, hey, let's understand this. Let's not just throw money at it. You know, let's not just
Exactly.
throw $300 a month at it, you know, whatever the case might be. Let's actually understand what you're doing here because you can make more wealth that way.
So true. So true. And I think that idea sort of spills over into other areas of your life too. You know, when you lean into what means the most to you, like not going off of what you've heard other people say or whatever, but what connects to you. And I think being a woman is super, super important, super powerful, and leaning into like, okay, how does this affect me? How does it affect my kids? How does it affect me as a businesswoman? All the facets of my life, I think, are things that we need to put in the forefront and be honest and intentional about. And partnering with other women who can speak to that. I think it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely need our advisors. Speaking of advisors, when it comes to personal brand, if I feel like this is something that you are really an expert on how to get that personal brand to come through. How can women look at that their brand, and how can it have influence over the decisions that they make?
I think in anything, I always say you start with your why for anything. Like I think it's super important, because if you don't know why you're doing anything, whether it's, you know, you start your business or whatever it is, why you want to become all the things, like if your why isn't clear, then you're going to go off brand. You're going to go off and you're going to try to be something that's not you. You're going to try to emulate somebody else that you saw on social media. Oh, I like how they did that. And then it becomes inauthentic. And I think what social media is actually showing you is the people that are true to who they are unapologetically, and they're clear about their messaging and their why, are the ones that really get the engagement. And it's no different than developing and creating a TV show. Like when I am creating a show, I'm thinking about what is the purpose of this? Who's the audience? How does this speak to me? Is this something that I want to do? You know, is this something that I would watch? What would I want to for people to get out of it? It is the same thing with yourself. Who are you? Why are you doing what you're doing? What is it that you're putting out in the world? And is it authentic and true to who you are? And the other thing is, and I think that the one thing that we're not honest about is the why has to be something beyond just yourself. It has to be an act of service. And I know people are like, oh my God, you know, white noise, but I'm telling you, when you are being driven by something bigger than you, when you are being driven by an act of service to help people, to see people thrive, when it's something beyond yourself, you're going to go the distance because you have a goal, you have a purpose. You know, if everything that you do is about you, that is a never ending well that never gets filled. You are never going to be fully satisfied. You're never going to be fully sustained. It just does not work long term. But when you have something where you're like, man, I am making a difference, like I am really being of service, then you're going to thrive. And so when you're thinking about your brand, and that's what you have to be, and you got to be true to that thing, and you got to be honest about it. And if it is about, I just want to make this money, well, that's fine. But just know that that's not a long-term goal. It has to be something bigger than you.
Right. And like, why do you want to make the money? Like, what's it for? Because it's not
That
just
part,
for
yeah.
shoes and clothes. I mean, you could do that, but that's not going to fill you up. Right. So it's like,
Exactly.
find the reason why you want to make money. You know, maybe it's because you grew up in an environment where you didn't have that, and you want to make sure your kids never have to experience that. That's a pretty big why.
That is a big why. And then turning that into service. Like, I don't
Exactly.
want anybody else to have to go through that because of what I went through. You know,
Right.
like I think at the end of the day, it's got to be a good leader is always a person who's about serving. You want to make sure that the people that you're leading are feeling supported, lifted, empowered to even want to follow you. And that includes the people you're leading to buy into whatever product, or including yourself. that you want them to really understand and want to believe. And if you're not true to that, I mean, you ask yourself that, would you go with somebody who's like, you don't trust or you don't believe that they believe in what they're doing, or it's not authentic to who they are? No way. You wouldn't.
Well, I mean, it's so much easier to lead with your heart and with something that is close and valuable to you, that you're giving service to others. It's so much easier to run your life like that and your business like that than having a mask and having to play a role every day because that's the role you think people want to hear or buy or listen to. And then you've got to have that mask on every day. So much easier to just live authentically, right?
So much easier. But I get it though. Like, I get that thing, especially as women. Sometimes some of us, we just do the comparison game. We just do, right? And it's just this natural thing that we do. And all of a sudden, I do it sometimes. And I'm not even one of those people I'm pretty confident in who I am, but there's sometimes where I have those moments where I'm like, man, she did a really good job. And there's nothing wrong with learning from other people. But when you're comparing yourself and you're leveling yourself, that's when you get in your head and you're like, oh, sometimes we have false starts. Sometimes we don't want to do it because we don't think we can do it at that level, or, oh my God, she's so good at this. I'm in that same space. If I can't do it like that, then do I even do it? Like, that's where you get in trouble, but when you take out all the noise and you really focus on, man, if I could just touch one, if I could just help somebody with this, if I could create this for myself and my family to where it can impact generations, like, then it doesn't really matter after that. It's like, I'm just going to go for broke. And if I got to learn along the way or dust my knees off or dust my, my elbows off and skin my knees, that's fine. But at least I stepped out and I did it. And so that's what I want to encourage women today, to just say, you know what? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to do it because there's something bigger than myself here at stake. And I want to jump in with everything and go for it.
I love that. So now that we've got the branding down and we're living authentically, what's your advice on how women can secure investments or funding for their business ideas?
And I was thinking about that, like, in terms of when you say business ideas, is it just funding to start a business, funding to what, like, specifically?
Let me ask it a different way. So I have a niece that just graduated from Northridge. She's now, she got graduated with a screenwriting degree. She wants to write comedies. She is writing comedies. Our family gives her all these ideas, like, we need something about an airport because it's hilarious if you really step back and watch people go through TSA, right? And so she has her own ideas. She really doesn't need us telling her what to do, but we're helping her out. So let's say she wrote a show and she now wants to take it to the next step and bring it to somebody like you. What would be some steps that she would need to take? Because obviously, yeah.
The times have changed, Holly. The times have changed. It's Wild Wild West right now. And people like me who used to be the gatekeepers are dwindling by the droves every minute of every second of every day. And which is kind of sad for the people in my generation who were used to that. But it's amazing for the people like your niece, because what the world is, what culture, what the environment is saying is that you hold your destiny in your hands. You have an idea. You don't have to wait to go to an India to say you're good enough to go to put on a network. You can start your own YouTube channel. You can create your own network. You can pool your resources from your friends and your family to invest in your idea and go shoot it your darn self. And then you can license it to all these different streaming. I mean, there's hundreds of networks now. Hundreds. You remember when we were growing up, not to date us, we didn't have very many.
3 channels.
Yeah. So the gatekeepers were gods, right? Now, forget about it. Your niece, this is the best time for her to come out and be herself and thrive, and just really it does start with investing with people who believe in you first, and absolutely, and reaching out to people who you trust, who believe in you, to just start to fuel her ideas and get them out there, putting in the festivals. I mean, when you look at Ryan Coogler, I mean, he's an amazing director, but he started off doing a little indie film with Michael B. Jordan, of someone who no one knew in Fruitvale Station, that goes on, to win these festivals, that goes on to get nominated for awards. And now he's directing big time films. I mean, literally, that is what we're talking about, is the world is her oyster. Literally, she can go make it happen and it will happen. And so that is what I would say with anybody these days who are looking to invest in their dream. Start with the people around you who, and if you don't, people are like, nobody I know has money or whatever, then what you do is, in Google is a beautiful thing. You can reach out to people even now who you can say, who are the people in my industry, or who are the people in the industry that, for example, if she's doing a screenwriting, if she's doing a show about, I forgot
Airport.
what, airports. Are there people who invest in airports? Are there
Mhm.
billionaires who are, you can Google that. You can reach out to those people. Hey, I have an idea. Would you like to invest? Or have you ever wanted to do television film? I have investors who are NFL players. I have investors who are just people with money who just want to know about TV and want to get, whatever that subject matter is. Social impact is huge. There are grants, monies out there for people who are in the field of social impact. I mean, it's out there. You just have to be driven, and you have to really believe in your product and your idea, and do the work to reach out to the people who want to play in the sandbox in terms of whatever your creation is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, India, you're really a really good storyteller. I have heard you time and time again. How do you think women can leverage storytelling to elevate their careers or their business?
I think it's imperative. And how to elevate it is, again, and I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record here, authenticity. Nobody can tell your story like you. They just can't. And the thing is that I think it starts with knowing that everybody has a story worth telling. Everybody's been through something. No one is void of any sort of heartache, adversity, any trauma. Like, no one in this world has ever gone without adversity or something that they've learned to overcome. No one. And I think the key is knowing that even if it's been similar to somebody, nobody is you, and nobody has the exact same story as you. It doesn't matter how many times you could tell a story about, being broke and getting it back, or, a broken marriage or broken relationship, or lost your company and had to come back, or whatever, or filing bankruptcy and how you overcome that, or no, it doesn't matter. It's your story and how you tell it. And when you are authentic and are transparent and vulnerable, when people see that and they're able to see themselves in you, it automatically connects you as somebody they can trust, or that they can say, wow, she's not scared to be honest. She's somebody who I think that I can roll up my sleeves with, and I can learn from, or I can walk alongside and be partners with. And when you're able to do that, I mean, sky's the limit. And again, you got to be honest, man. You got to be honest, and you got to be forthright. You can't, skate around things. Be transparent. That's what people are looking for and are starving for.
So India, as you're talking about being authentic, telling your story, and you were talking about how there's no more gatekeepers, or there's very few gatekeepers, and that you can just create your own channel, or wherever you're going with that, or wherever you're going with your brand or your business. Do you think now that the opposite problem is, not that we can't get to the gatekeeper, but that there's so many people doing very similar things? Like, do you feel like um, media, or being an online presence, or some those kinds of things, is it saturated where it's harder to get eyes on you because
It is.
everyone
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ali.
oh,
Finish.
just because everyone's telling their story, and so it's so easy to do now that there's a lot of people doing it.
I think that when you have something niche, right? Like, so it's your story, but then it could be how you tell it. It could be where you're from. It could be the fact that you could be from, rural Mississippi, and maybe your audience is just that audience. Well, there's a lot of people in that audience. And not everybody is reaching that audience. It's no different than a network. It's no different than a studio. The number one network every year when it comes to branding is HGTV. You don't ever have to think about it. You already know what you're getting. There's not a whole lot of need for marketing. And that's how they win. You already know. They're not flipping the game. It's the same thing over and over. But people know when I come there, that's what I'm getting. Not everybody wants to build homes. Not everybody wants to see homes being built. But the people that do, come. So you have to figure out within your story what makes you different. It could be the same story. There's other people doing flipping houses. There's other networks but you know HGTV because they do the same thing and they're consistent and they know who they are. Another network, Hallmark. Mm-hmm. How many TV movies can one watch? How many holiday films can you watch in Snowflake Falls where it's the same thing? But for decades, they have their audience and they're feeding them. And they're not trying to be VH1. They're not trying to be anybody else but Hallmark. That you have to see yourself as a network. Like, who is my audience? Let me freaking drill hard on that audience. If I can get 1,000 people, that's a lot of people. 500 and build off of that. That's a lot of 20. Start with 20 and build. When you have your niche audience, it's okay. Find what's authentic to you, which is why being authentic is so important, because just by your story, you know, maybe it's the way that you overcame, maybe it's where you came from, maybe it's little nuances of your story that connect to one particular group that they just want to lean into you. That is okay, but you gotta do the work to find, like, and sometimes it takes time. It takes time to cultivate that, to roll that out, to kind of see the analytics and metrics from the people who are coming to you. What are they saying? That's something that someone else told me. They were like, your audience will tell you who they are. When you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, oh my God, when you said blah, 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 oh my God, I just love your blah, blah, blah. Or the way that you say blah, 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 that really hit home with me. When you keep getting that same note 4 and 5 times, then you're like, that's what's resonating. I need to lean into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, 30 minutes goes by way too fast. We're definitely going to have you on our podcast so we can get more information from you. But India, tell our audience how they can reach out to you, how they can get to, follow you and hear all of your stories. And I mean it, everyone on this show, listen back and see how India got started, because she has such an amazing journey. And I know that she's done tons of interviews and has it on there. She talks about this one time whenever, when the market crashed and everything, that, Hollywood wasn't hiring. And so you really got to listen to that story, because you're going to hear some really great nuggets. So India, tell us how we can reach you.
Well, listen, I'm on Instagram at Miss India, MSENDYIA. You can find me. Oh, look at that. They are on it. I love it. It's all there. And also something else that I didn't get a chance to talk about, Holly, my husband and I started a podcast. It's called It Ain't Personal, It's Spiritual. It's going to start April 2nd. It's going to start rolling out April 2nd on all of the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere where you can hear podcasts, we will be there. And really, it's just talking about going through life, understanding really not to take things personal, how everything is spiritual. It's something beyond just what you see, and how that's going to help you in your everyday life, your career, your relationships, your family. It's kind of what we talked about. Don't take things personal when you know it's something beyond that. Is it resentment? Is it this? Is it that? What is it? So that's what we're talking about, and hoping to inspire and encourage people all over the world to just live a better life, man.
Yeah. Well, thank you, India. We will definitely make sure that we get that information in the show notes so that people can find you and reach out to you. Mwah, I love you. Thank you again.
Girl. Thank you guys so much for having me. You've been amazing hosts. And invite me anytime. I'm here for you.
Oh, thanks, India. Have a great day.
You
and
too.
Go get them. Well, that was a lot, right? We covered a lot. Start with your why. Partnership, she ended it perfectly. I don't really have to cover that, but I just love the fact that you don't have to get defensive when somebody you love gives you feedback. and social impact. Now, if you want to know who your audience is, go out there and start telling your authentic story, and you will find out.
Yes. So let's bring Talena Hanley on, founder of Girly Garage. She launched Girly Garage with a mission for women to learn something useful while having amazing, meaningful experience and leaving feeling empowered. Talena, tell us more about you.
Hey, ladies. Hopefully my audio is good for you.
Sounds
Yes.
great.
Awesome. I was listening to India, and I'm not going to lie. I'm so honored to follow her because she's so inspiring, and everything she said actually rings true for me too. So I hope everybody caught that, because wow, she had a lot of good nuggets. So yeah, I started Girly Garage because, I didn't trust anybody. So my car was stolen, my very first car, Honda Civic, stolen twice. And after it was stolen, I literally just didn't trust anybody to help me put it back together, especially my ex. So I put myself through automotive school. I never wanted to become like a traditional mechanic. And I didn't realize that there's so many cool things that you can do with a hard skill. So the hard skill is having the knowledge of taking things apart and putting them back together. Now, a lot of people don't like this, but I do compare this to baking. Do either of you do any baking?
Some.
Yep.
Okay, well, if you can follow a recipe, you can fix a car.
No.
It's about having the right tools. So you have measuring cups, you have, a whisk, you have the right size bowls. It's the same thing with a car. You have all of the tools you need. And then a lot of times your service manual has step-by-step instructions and pictures. So there's a lot of things that are so scary about these giant machines that we climb into. And the scary part is that we don't necessarily trust them, right? If we don't know enough about this machine that we carry ourselves, we carry our kids, we run around down the freeway 80 miles an hour. Like, if you don't trust that, then there's a piece of you that is sort of uneasy every single day. And so that's how I got my start in Girly Garage. Is I launched this business because I knew my friends were getting taken advantage of, and I wanted to do something about it.
That is amazing. I love that. Before I left for college, which I went to college a long time ago, ladies. So I drove. So long story short, I ended up going to Arkansas State for my last year. And I was driving there, right? So my dad, I already knew how to like change a tire, oil change and all that. But he gave me like a refresher course, right? Because I'm driving, how many miles, 3 days basically out to Arkansas from San Diego. And so I think it's really important. And I don't think it's something that we do these days. I don't think we teach our boys that or our girls that. And, my dad made sure that all of us, I have a brother and a sister, that we all could change our tire, know that we need an oil change, check the oil, make sure the tires are good, all those things. So how do you think that we could get back to being a little bit more on the mechanical side of things?
You bring up such a good point, because there's like this period in our lives, right? That if you had the chance to learn, or maybe you had a parent teach you, then you have that under your belt, right? But there's like this weird point where it's like, oh, we stepped off into adulthood and we don't have those skills. How do we now gain them? Because they're even more important when we start to have kids of our own, or when we start to, venture off to college, like whatever that looks like. And I feel like it's hard for us to commit to something that's like 16 weeks. So in, a continuing education program. But if you can find something that takes a day, or maybe a week, or in my case, 3 hours, then that's something that you can totally feel more confident with, and also find those skills. Now, there's so much, like India was saying, there's so much free content out there. The hard part is making sure that you're verifying your resource, basically, like what they taught us in school, right? Make sure that you understand your source. So you need to make sure that if you're getting that information, that you're getting it from somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, who is trained, and so that you don't get injured, so that you don't put yourself in a sticky situation. So I would definitely recommend starting with what's free. I mean, I call it YouTube Academy. I think other people use that term as well. But there's so much good stuff on there that, I mean, I have a channel as well, but that's something that people can totally do to better themselves, as well as find other resources that might kind of click for them. It's like finding your yoga teacher, right?
Yeah. And something that came up in my life that I didn't even think about, because growing up, we had a house, we could work in our garage or in our driveway. But then when I got married, we had a complex that you weren't allowed to work in your carport area. So when it comes to those things, and then it's like, okay, well, I have to take it to a mechanic. Is there another option for people?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'm a mobile mechanic as well, and I can't work in apartment complexes. But you know how you got to the apartment complex, you drove in and there was like a side street? That's perfectly safe. So let's say that you needed to check or change your engine air filter, which is one of our most commonly upsold items. So that's one of those items that when you go to get your oil changed, they sell you something else, so upsold. And that's something where you can save yourself the most money every single year. Now that they're not going to catch you, it takes you 5 minutes and no tools to do in your carport. But if you needed to do something more excessive and you wanted to tackle it yourself, you can definitely do that on a street. You could do it in the back of a Walmart parking lot. Like, nobody cares. There's so much space out there. Home Depot parking lots are great. Yeah, there's space. We live in cities. We live in a very big concrete jungle. So there is room to do that if you so desire.
So what was some of the biggest challenges you faced as a female entrepreneur in this very male dominated industry, right? What would you say you had to overcome?
God, everybody asks me that. I think it's so funny because everybody's like, oh, male dominated industry, how do you survive? I think just like everybody else, you're overcoming obstacles when you first get started, right? And then there's a point where you just speak the language, right? So when you speak the language, you're becoming and showing up to be your best authentic person. Oh, there it is again. India said it's so true. You have to be your authentic self, and you also have to just be the best you possibly can. I have never had a problem with anybody else in the industry when I know my stuff. And that's the thing, right? If I don't know my stuff, I say that too. I'm like, hey, like, I'm not quite sure about this specific task. Would you like to lend your wisdom? Or maybe I'm not comfortable doing this. Let's hand that off to somebody else. And I think that honesty with myself as well as with my customer is what really builds. And I've never had a problem with men. Mostly men in my industry are male allies. And so they're the ones that want to help lift women up. They want to support women. They understand that there is a problem and that we're overcoming it. There are definitely still scavengers out there. There's still people who will take advantage. And that's why we need to educate ourselves so that we can go find the good guys and support them.
Yeah, something India talks about too is that people can feel when you're not being authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that you just say, like, hey, I don't know this. I either need a resource or can you be my resource? And Holly and I have also, I mean, we're in a typically male dominated industry, but something I learned at our conference, one of the vendors that we work with, their agents, 52, I think 55, 52% of them are female now. And so once we empower women to live authentically and to walk a path that they're passionate in, it gives them the opportunity to thrive in that. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Women don't really think about the fact that they can be really skilled in this industry. If you want to be a mechanic, these tools right here are something you can't pay for. You're smaller, you're more agile, you can get into places. Like, cars are so compact nowadays because there's so much plastic. But there's so many other jobs that if you don't want to use your hands necessarily, you can also use your brain. So you can work in racing, you can work in administrative, you can work in the back end where there's accounting and controlling of, large businesses like dealerships. You could be a service manager. There's so many cool jobs in automotive that if you just put your foot in the door with some basic knowledge or YouTube Academy, that there's a chance that you can do something that you're really passionate about.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we do talk about even one of the questions that we didn't get to with India talked about the media industry being male dominated. And really, I mean, of course, everything is going to be male dominated because we haven't even started being able to own our own business or have a checking account. We've only been able to do that for 52 years. So it's the evolution of what's coming. So that's one of my goals, is to eliminate the fact that we even have to say male dominated industry. We just say this is the industry and these are the women and men that work in this industry. Right.
100%.
So I understand that when you started your business, you were able to utilize grants and other types of funding sources to build your business. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, especially for anybody who's a small business or an entrepreneur who's watching this right now. My business is 100% bootstrapped until this last year where I got my first big grant. And bootstrapping is hard. Every cent that you make is either feeding you or going back into your business. And you might not look at it like that, but it's like, oh, I bought a new tool today. And you're like, oh, it was $25. But like, then you do that 5 times and you're like, oh, okay, eating this week becomes harder. So there's so much that goes into that you maybe don't prepare for, but also you are so prepared for because your passion is what drives that. And when you're doing something that's solving a problem for people, I don't advertise at all. People just bang down my door. They understand the value of knowledge, something that people can't take away from them. And that's going to save them money for the rest of their lives. So I recently applied. I apply all the time to grants. Like friends send them to me. I'm subscribed to multiple newsletters. I think that's super helpful. Some of my favorites, if it's helpful for anybody, is I really like Hello Alice. They do a really good job with like what's coming up for grants and tell you which kind of businesses can apply for them. I really like the Chamber of Commerce. They have a national Chamber of Commerce. I think their newsletter is just called CO. That also has really good like grants and funds that are available for people. The nice thing about grants is you don't have to pay them back. So I did win a pretty large grant, which in my opinion it was $25,000. And that is open to female founders in the US. I believe their application is opening again this summer. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It was called I Fund Women. And that was a really good platform. It's also a crowdfunding platform. So I did some crowdfunding after I won the grant as well, which is another cool way. I know a lot of people maybe know of GoFundMe. GoFundMe is a way to crowdfund. I Fund Women, that platform doesn't take the fees from you like GoFundMe would. So basically you get the money that you get from your donor. I think that those are really they're helpful ways to gain money because the people that believe in you are donating to the cause. I have some less traditional ways that I also make money. I do a lot of affiliate marketing. I also do, and I only do affiliate marketing with things I believe in because goodness gracious, don't try to sell something you don't believe in.
Going back to authenticity.
Yes. Well, I mean, like, especially on the screen, like people can really tell. They're like, this person is peddling garbage. Like, so yeah, I do that. And then I also have like Patreon and things like that set up so that if people are really getting something from like my YouTube channel, they can go on and, donate like a $5 cup of coffee once a month, basically. And then that way that really helps creators continue to keep that content free for everybody. So those are some sort of non-traditional ways that I have kept my business bootstrapped. Applying for grants has become a lot less like difficult from a small business perspective. So when you find those applications, just set aside 20 or 30 minutes. All the answers are already in your head on how to answer every single question in there. And so it's like when you're a small business, just do it. You never know when a big one's going to come through or when $1,000 will come through. That's a lot of money for a small business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's so many good nuggets in there, and we're definitely going to chop that up so people can get those resources and also put them in the show notes. So, because that's so good, and small businesses just need that type of funding when they're just getting started. And now I believe we met around COVID online.
Yes, we did.
And ever since then, I have been watching your content. I love it. It's funny. Sometimes you've got serious content, and sometimes I'm like, I didn't even think about that. I was just telling them about the bag situation and having your windows unrolled.
Yeah.
So talking about content and collaboration, how do you work with other women within your industry or within the community to empower each other, and why is that important to you?
I mean, but I feel like everybody had an immediate answer when you asked that, right? Like your internals were just like, because we're women, like a rising tide lifts all boats. We understand that. I didn't really realize that I was an educator until like I started my business. So I would be fixing a car and the customer would be standing over my shoulder, which in school, when I was in automotive school, that was terrifying for me. But now I'm just like, I would be talking to myself anyway. So now I'm talking to them. They're learning some cool stuff. If they're comfortable, I just let them throw some gloves on and help and get dirty. And that is, I mean, I helped a woman last week. She was like, I now understand how my brakes work so that I can understand if something fails, how to really either diagnose it, understand if it's a major or a minor concern. Like, do I need to pull over and stop driving right now? Or can I make it home safely and make an appointment? Like, that's a huge concern. Tire pressure. Not only are we paying exorbitant prices for fuel in Southern California, but if you have the correct tire pressure, you're getting better gas mileage. You're safer on the road. The way that your car handles is much safer. That actually makes our communities safer. Because think about it. Mom down the streets driving in and out 3-4 times a day, picking up groceries, picking up kids, going to work. If they don't have the correct tire pressure and they need to slam on the brakes, they are not going to be able to stop in the way that they need to. So building my communities up through knowledge so that they can take that knowledge and maybe tell their neighbor about it or tell the other new moms in their mom group about it. That is why I lift up people while I'm teaching or while I'm working. I've had a chance to use social media to connect with women all across the nation because there's so few women in automotive. There's literally about 19,000 women who are trained automotive technicians in a country of 350 million. Wow. So it's a pretty small knit group. That doesn't include people who are like in racing, because there's a lot of female racers and they're badass. But specifically mechanics. And I've had a chance to connect with them both on social media and in real life. And I've never met anybody who is so competitive that they're like, nope, not going to help you. And that's actually how you and I met, because I think I reached out and I was like, hey, do you want to do this fun like collaboration reel? I'm going to toss you a wrench and you're going to toss it to the next person. And then we all became friends after that, which was so cool.
Yes, I remember that.
It was really good. Cool. It turned out so good.
It did. It was really fun to collaborate with a bunch of women who I've never met before, and to just see like different personalities and styles. And like you said, it's not a competition. It wasn't like who did it better. Mm-hmm. It was like we all just came together to create this fun video, and it empowered all of us. And I'm sure it empowered other people to be like, oh, wow, these women, they're holding tools, they're getting dirty. I think I had just changed my oil. So it was really fun.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. So, Talena, can you tell us a little bit about, or can you tell our listeners a little bit about why it's important to drive safely when it very first starts raining? Now, I know the answer to this, but I was in a group of women recently and they did not. So, can you just share that? Because it is almost spring most places, and that's when we usually get a few showers.
Yeah,
That
well,
was
it actually dumped rain in Southern California for the last couple days. And the thing about that is that I've done lots of videos specifically on tires, tires, tires. And this is something that I teach a lot of. Now, let me just ask the two of you, why are our tires important?
Because they're the foundation of the vehicle. They hold us up
They
everywhere
are
we go.
yes, they're the only thing connecting you to the road.
Right.
So we need a couple things out of them. Number one, we need correct tire pressure. Number two, we need tread. Now, our tread is super important because not only does it connect us to the road and create that friction, but if you don't have enough tread, enough thickness of tread, it does not have the ability to push water away from your car. So there's a penny trick. I'm sure everybody's kind of heard of the penny trick. It lives in the back of your mind. People don't really know what it means. You take Abraham Lincoln, you turn him upside down. If you can see his hair, then you do not have enough tread on your tires to push water away from your car. Now, all of our tires also have a tread wear indicator built into them, unless you have big, like knobby truck or Jeep tires. And that tread wear indicator, when the tire becomes flush, so when the tread wears down to that indicator and it becomes flush, then it is time to change those tires. So it's super important because not only can you have bald tires that you maybe didn't know about, but all of the things that drip off of your car and collect over time make the road much more slippery when it first rains. So when you're driving, there's a couple things you can do to protect yourself. You can drive behind another vehicle who's splashing water out of the way, drive in their tire tracks. You can avoid the outermost lanes because the water pools there the most. Definitely check your tires before you drive. Like maybe make a decision like, oh, I have somewhere really important to go, but I have bald tires. Do you want to make it there in one piece or do you want to maybe reschedule? So there's a lot of things that happen to like, and I mean, that was 3.5 minutes of knowledge that's probably going to save at least 50 people.
Absolutely. I mean, I was really looking at the fact that, our roads are made of tar, then they put oil over it. And then when all that junk that comes out of your car over time, think of all the hundreds of thousands of cars that are driving on the road, right? And that's why it makes it slick when it rains, because there's a lot of oil on the road as well. But yes, definitely the tires are the reason why we want to make sure that we have great tires. I love that. So another question that I have is about women that are aspiring entrepreneurs. What kind of advice would you give to women that are just starting their journey?
I feel like you need to really think through, are you actually solving a problem? That's something that I try and give all aspiring entrepreneurs, because you could just think, oh, like this would be really cool to have. But are you solving a problem? Do you have a business? And you might not be solving a problem for millions of people, but maybe you're solving a problem, like India was saying, for that niche. Maybe you're solving a problem for 100,000 people. That is still a viable business as long as you have repeat customers. So I would say make sure you have a problem, and also make sure that you're, again, not peddling garbage. So whatever your solution is, like make it something that's going to last. People are so sick of buying something that breaks or buying something that feels so cheap. Like we're ready to go back to not having everything made out of plastic and ready to like learn how to repair rather than replace. So make something that's quality as far as your solution.
So, Talena, you've given us some good nuggets today. How do people work with you? Can they work with you virtually? Do they work with you in person? How do people find you?
Well, so Girly Garage is about to be a household name. You heard it here first. We are looking to expand into every major metropolitan city so that people can physically have that in-person experience of learning a workshop. I work with ages 6 all the way up to about 75. We have different content for different people. to inspire you to know more about your vehicle or to think about a vehicle and how it works so that we can be better maintaining them. I do in person in San Diego. So if you are in Southern California, I do travel up to LA all the time. And then virtually, I have YouTube and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and LinkedIn and yeah, all of the things. I have all of the things. So I want to keep all of this content that I create for people free. I don't want to put it behind a paywall. I want this to be accessible. So I create bite-sized content. So something less than 10 minutes long, no fluff. And I loved how India was saying, like, when you make that connection, your audience is going to tell you what they want. And people love no fluff. We're so freaking busy. Like, teach me something so I can get out of here. Or like, I only have 5 minutes while I'm on the toilet. Like, teach me something cool. Like, like that's my space and time. So I really value that. And I try and keep it free for everybody. So YouTube and Instagram are my primaries. TikTok is kind of a fun platform.
So I'm just popping that up while you continue to talk so that people can find you. I put your LinkedIn handle and your Instagram, and then they can also find you at Girly Garage, which I'm sure all of your links are on your website. But just wanted to flash that so people could see them. Take a picture.
I do a lot of mentorship for women in automotive. So if for any reason somebody is heading that direction and they have questions or they need an ally, please reach out, use the contact form, DM me on Instagram. I'm happy to help.
Well, also, we would love to have you on our podcast. Maybe we can dive a little bit deeper into Girly Garage going nationwide in big metropolitan cities, because we might have some investors in our listening group. I mean, we did talk a little bit about how you might be funding some of that, but, if it's like a franchise model or whatever the case might be, we might have some resources for you in our group that can help you grow that along as well.
Yeah. And the people element as well. So it's always been one of my dreams to give good people jobs. And so I'm always looking for those people who maybe really understand the value of working for themselves and starting their own business, but don't want to go through the first, 5 years, which is the painful part. And that's who I want to be on my team, is like somebody who wants to give back to their communities.
I have a perfect person for you in Las Vegas.
Yes, I love it.
You need it too. Yes. Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being on our show. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
All right. Next, we're going to have Kate Payne come up. Holly, why don't you introduce Kate Payne?
Yes. So if you guys saw any of our social media posts about Kate, her and I have traveled the world together. We've been to Bali, Singapore, and Dallas quite a bit together. And I just love Kate and everything LinkedIn that she can provide. I mean, in this 30 minutes, she's going to drop, you want to definitely get your pages out and your pen ready. I mean, I've been taking notes from both of these. So when I'm looking down, it's only because I'm checking my notes and making sure that I'm spelling correctly. Cause those of us in a certain age range have to have glasses on nowadays. But I loved some of the stuff that Talena was talking about. And I really think that Kate coming on next is really going to put a bow on some of the stuff that India and Talena were talking about, because they really are giving us the authentic side of it. And Kate's going to talk about how do we show up authentic online. So let's go ahead and bring Kate on and let's get her to introduce herself as well. Hi, Kate.
Hey, how are you? It's good to see you, Holly and Allie. I've been so excited about this for a few days, and all morning I'm like, woo!
Welcome. Why don't you go ahead and just share with our audience a little bit more about you? I mean, obviously that's a personal introduction, but I know you have a lot of credentials to back you up, my friend.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I'm the founder and CEO of Standing Out Online. It's the third iteration of a couple of businesses of mine that I started in 2014, really focusing on digital marketing, PR by way of visibility through all different kinds of media. India talked about that quite a bit about all the different channels that are available now. I put a comment in because I listened to her about like, and you said, Holly, we used to have 3 TV stations when we were growing up, right? And magazines and radio and stuff like that. Now there's podcasts and there's blogs and there's so many other things. So I work primarily with entrepreneurs, people who are their own brand, people who are speakers, authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, executives who are well established, who are wanting to do things beyond just social media. They want to leverage some online and digital assets. So I help them kind of understand what their personal brand is and really work with them to showcase and leverage their thought leadership online.
And that's awesome because India was talking about, how important your brand is and then being authentic. So how do people start? And, before you answer that, it's funny that, it is really the base of your business.
Mm-hmm.
And people sometimes when they have a business idea, they just started to go for it and then they work themselves backwards. So how would people build the brand from start? And do you recommend people just go for it, or do you really recommend building the brand from the start?
Well, when we talk about branding, just to kind of make a little bit of a distinction here, there's branding and then there's personal branding. Branding is really like the look and the feel of your business, product, service. It's the logo, it's the colors, it's the font, it's your website, it's all the things that you put out there to brand the business. Personal branding is you, right? Like, and your personal brand is foundational to your point, Allie. So you can still go for it in a lot of ways. But you should have, it's really helpful to identify your personal brand to really understand, because it's foundational, because then you are figuring out, well, when I leverage these online resources and I put myself out there, and I always say, my name of my business is standing out online, but I always say you want to stand out online and off, right? In person. Think about how you want to position yourself. So understanding your personal brand is important. When I talk about personal branding with people, I'm like, your personal brand essentially equals your reputation. And your reputation is made up of your values, your integrity, certainly your experience in your business, but it's also even a little bit of your influence. When people get to know you for what you do, then that's where the word of mouth happens. Oh, you need a so-and-so? You need a person to teach you about how to take care of your car? You need to reach out to Talena. And so you're creating what we call in the marketing world an acronym called TOMA, top of mind awareness. So understanding your personal brand gives you that foundation so that when you create your content, when you create your messaging, if you're a speaker and you're on stage, people start to understand who you are and they know you by way of the things that you're an expert in.
Yeah. And I mean, I think for me, one of the things that I've really enjoyed working with you on is identifying how to use LinkedIn effectively for my business and for, just recruiting and other things that are a part of my business. Can you talk a little bit about how women can use LinkedIn effectively? I mean, that's a very big question, but maybe you can just give us like 2 or 3 tips to make it more effective.
Well, I'll give you 2.
Okay.
One is you need to show up. You need to actually use LinkedIn. A lot of people have it and then they just don't really know what to do with it. So they're sort of like running idly in the background. Number 2, when you are putting content out, when you are showing up on the LinkedIn platform, be a resource, not a resume. Okay. This is where it's a lot of people think that when you're on LinkedIn that you have to have this like staid, stoic, professional voice and you only talk about business and this and that. Yes, you want to talk about your topics and you want to educate people and you want to show how you solve problems, but you also need to show some personality because people are going to build connection with you. So more and more people are using LinkedIn. A lot of power users of LinkedIn actually kind of refer to LinkedIn as a personal brand platform or a personal brand channel. Okay. So, a lot of times people go on LinkedIn and they post content and they're teaching people about something, they're educating them. That's great. But, as we've all talked about, and Talena mentioned this, and India and you guys for sure, and all that you do in your podcast, you need to solve a problem for someone. You need to talk about how you solve the problem. And I don't mean like the how of getting into the weeds of how, but what is the outcome that you provide? So for example, Holly, you and I have talked about this. When you're working on just the about section of your LinkedIn profile, I incorporate what I call a 3-part recipe to that. who you are, what you do, and how you help. So the who you are might be a little slice of life story that relates to your expertise. The middle part of that about section is the what you do. Who do you serve? What's the work that you do? And then an outcome is what's a benefit you provide. So if a viewer arrives to your profile, they're making a connection with you. And it's not just a bio. Okay. So that's why I'm saying be a resource, not a resume.
Yeah, I like
So everyone's going to their LinkedIn right now and changing their bios.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
I
and
know.
don't call
I
it a
learned-
bio. I mean, I know you're making a joke, Allie, but don't think of it as a bio. You know, in our world, like Holly and Allie, like especially in like the eWomen network community, because you're going to have Sandra on later. If any of us ever have the delightful opportunity to speak on their stage, they ask you for a bio, and then the person who's the MC, introduces you by reading that bio. That's a bio on the back of a book. Those are bios. Your LinkedIn profile can be so much more than that. People want to find something different. And that's a lot of what I think about when you're thinking about your personal brand, how you show up online, your visibility is to leverage visibility in a way that's unexpected.
Yeah. That's what I was going to mention. I think that's one of the things you've been able to help me with is like, there's 5 million probably life insurance agents out there, but how do I stand out differently?
Right.
Not only just using that about section, but also where can you put other details about your company or yourself and moving things around. So go ahead, Allie. I know you had a question.
You're doing that, Holly, by way of this show right now, your podcast. Financial advisors typically aren't holding summits on YouTube and things like that. They're not maybe doing a podcast the way you're doing it because you're bringing your personality into it, Holly. I mean, like I said, I've traveled the world with you. You are like the social director of the world. I mean, you are like, moving and shaking and getting people on board and energizing people. And you're bringing that to this to get other people energized. And that's what your differentiator is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So as people are, they want to become a thought leader online and in their real life. What are some mistakes that women make along the way?
I think what they do, I sort of alluded to this before. I think especially from the LinkedIn side, they go on there thinking they need to be really like stoic and just professional only. And they don't know about engaging and they don't think about setting themselves apart. So I think that's part of it. I think a lot of people just get stuck. I think they're like, oh, on Facebook, I'm with my friends and my family and maybe some people and I'm informal. And on Instagram, I'm doing this and that, and I'm, posting pretty pictures and it's more visual. And then LinkedIn, it's a big animal. I really don't know what to do. So I'll just do a little bit and I'll just kind of go, not sure. So, but be different, leverage the, I know we've been using the word authentic and authenticity, and it's a commonly used word now, but think about your differentiator. Think about what sets you apart. So it may be a skill you have. It may be an outcome you provide. Maybe it's the approach you have with your clients. What are those things that make you different from your competition? And then build on those. So don't do this formulaic kind of thing. Well, this person's doing that. This person's doing that. So I guess I should do that. And don't be afraid to be contrarian. Like if you're let's say a lot of times you'll see people on LinkedIn share a really interesting article that someone else wrote. So I referred to that as OPC, other people's content. But there's something you like about it, but there might be something you don't like about it. And I don't mean from the standpoint of vitriol. Like maybe there's 5 top tips for a certain something. 4 of them you love and the 5th one you don't. So you share that piece of content on LinkedIn and say, I love this article in many ways that so-and-so wrote. But in number 5, I don't agree with that because this is the way I do that. And then you get to share. It's not because you're saying it's better. It's just you're offering another point of view in a respectful way. And I think when more and more people do that on that kind of platform, it invites a deeper conversation in the dialogue.
So I actually have a second question, I guess, to that one. Is, where I'm at, I'm now in my 30s and I just had my birthday this last week.
She's 30.
Oh my
30.
God. Okay.
She's just 30.
I could be your mother. Just kidding.
Well, our podcast is millennial and Gen X, so we get that. So where I'm at, or at least in my 20s, what I was worried about is, other people seeing who I am was not professional enough. And so LinkedIn, it was like a mask of like, this is my professional side. And then Instagram and Facebook were more of like my playful side. So what is your advice for people? How do they mesh that together? Is there still certain rules that like the do and don'ts of LinkedIn where it's maybe okay on other platforms?
Great question. You know, one of the upsides of the pandemic is that all of us on all channels were showing up like in our pajamas, right? And all of a sudden, like, you know, like we were, it almost made that whole different kinds of formality, if you will, kind of go away. So I think people are more accepting of people now. I mean, look at when we go on a Zoom meeting, you know, some people, as Sandra Yancey always says, it makes me laugh. You know, I show up and I might have my hair in a potato chip clip, but you're showing up, right? And people don't care anymore as much. So think about the voice that you carry on your different channels. So you sort of have a voice on Instagram, like a way of doing it, one on Facebook, TikTok, maybe if you use it. And then on LinkedIn, you can still have an informal voice. Just keep your messaging about something, like a topic, just keep it sort of related to the profession. So let's say you do a work-related topic idea on Instagram. So on Instagram, maybe you're showing the visual side. You're showing, you know, something about it that's kind of fun and lighthearted. Okay, I'm just kind of pulling out of the air here. Take that same topic over on LinkedIn and do a behind-the-scenes video about that thing and explain it, or interview somebody and do a quick little 2-minute vertical video on LinkedIn. So it's still related to work, but it's not dry and it's interesting in a different way and it's unexpected. And by the way, we have, I've done a lot of research on new trends on LinkedIn in 2025. Short form vertical video is becoming really hot. Any video on LinkedIn is seen about 15 times more than a regular text post with image.
Wow.
So take advantage. I'm not saying you should flood it. And, you know, one of the things I want to say about LinkedIn is less is more on LinkedIn. If you post 1 to 2 times a week consistently, you can build a really good dialogue there. You do not have to be posting every day on LinkedIn.
How do you, this wasn't on our list of questions, but how do you avoid getting so much spam email? Is there a way?
Oh, that's such a good, I wish I had a really great clean cut answer to that. There's some things you can do to help reduce it.
Okay.
Number one is that just came out in the last 6 to 8 months on LinkedIn. If you've noticed next to your name on your personal profile page, there's like a little shield and it asks you to do a verification. That verification is legit and it's done through Clear, like you see at the airport.
Okay.
So go through that. You have to hold a selfie of yourself with like a driver's license or a passport, and you have to give a phone number. And then once you do that, that shows everybody in the world that you are a legitimate profile. So it's kind of like a verification. If you go into your privacy and settings on your LinkedIn account, there's under the visibility settings, you can actually set things in a way that there's a 2-step verification process, which is different than the verification badge. I would invite you to turn that on. But there's also settings in the back end where you can reduce a lot of the stuff that comes your way from LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn's algorithm is serving all these various things up to you. There's over 220 settings in LinkedIn that you can go through. And what I tell people is take 10 minutes of focus time, go through every single one, because LinkedIn turns them all on by default. You can go in and turn a lot of those things off. Is it going to get rid of the spam? No, it's going to reduce it though. Okay. The other thing that there's a real pro tip here, the more you incorporate your industry keywords for the work that you do into like your headline, into your narratives, then the connection requests you start to receive are actually going to be more legitimate from people within your industry. Right now, there's a lot of people who are using LinkedIn to just spam people. And they're using tools that are actually banned by LinkedIn. There's over 80 of them where they scrape data and people think it's legit. They pay for that service and then they start bulk emailing everybody. And so that's a lot of the stuff you see where people haven't even like asked you who you are and they just start selling you something by way of an invitation to connect. Mm-hmm. Just delete them, ignore them, and let them go. So some of that is just unavoidable. And LinkedIn, the company is trying to work on it.
Awesome.
It is
So
frustrating though, Holly.
I know. It's something.
Yeah, it is.
then you spend 10 minutes going through the settings and then another 5 minutes deleting all of those.
And then when a lot of people ask me this, when you ignore someone's invitation, they don't get a notification saying you ignored them. So I think a lot of people don't hit ignore because they're afraid it's going to make them look bad or somebody's not going to like me or something. Don't worry about it. Nobody knows.
Okay.
Yeah. So what kind of advice or tips can you give for women wanting to stand out? I know we use the word authentic, but now how do you make that authentic voice stand out in a crowded digital space?
Well, one of the things you can do is like reflect on what I call a little slice of life story for yourself. So like if you think about like how, like if you've been in business for a while, like, Holly, maybe your little story nugget is like, what made you go from whatever you used to do before to becoming a financial advisor? In insurance and financial advising now. What's the story there? I'm not saying you have to answer it right now. Think about that. Record it in the voice memo of your phone. Take like 2 or 3 minutes and kind of tell that little story. Then transcribe it. Incorporate that into like the about section of your LinkedIn profile. Incorporate some of this into your content on LinkedIn. It's not a normal thing to do. People are like, why does anybody care? Well, you guys have been talking about when India was on and Talena. It's the story that is what connects us. Yeah. It's such an easy thing to do. And I think a lot of times we think, oh, nobody really wants to know that. But remember, the story you can also still tell stories about the people you work with, your clients, the services that you provide. Do like little mini case studies that can become great content. Not a lot of people think of doing that. The other thing you can do, like you guys are doing by way of your podcast, is when you get a guest on your podcast, that podcast guest, encourage them to share the replay and to put that out in advance, like you set out the digital assets for all of us who are going to be on this. Get all that out in advance. These are things that are unexpected for people to see. And so then leverage those opportunities in your social content. Try to get on your local TV station. Reach out to your local affiliates. A lot of the local Fox News channels do a lot of local television, and they'll bring you into the studio or something like that. Think of an angle. That's what I work on with my PR clients. I help them come up with an angle. What can we do? Maybe we can get you on a really quality YouTube show. Maybe we can get you as a guest on a podcast. So think about these other ways that and leverage them in your content, not just the promotional side, but the information and the problem that you're solving. What you're sharing on those shows to solve a problem.
Yeah, I think that's great. So using LinkedIn, have you worked with anybody that has attracted investors? I know you have with clients and career opportunities, but how would you go about reaching out to investors? Now, I know that's not going to be just like a cold email you send somebody. No. You want to generate that relationship a little bit, but do you have anybody that's done that you've helped coach through that?
Not for the investors, but you bring up a good point. So if you're wanting to get in front of investors or VCs or whatever, go do a search on LinkedIn. In the top of your LinkedIn toolbar over to the left is a search field. It's just like Google, except in LinkedIn. And type in keywords that might find you results for who those people are. Maybe you know who some of those investors are. Go follow their company page if they have one. Follow them. Watch some of their content. Maybe reach out to them through a DM in LinkedIn and ask them, a question. But build the relationship first. Do your due diligence. Pay attention to what they put out there. Maybe they've been on a podcast. Go and do some research. Google them in Google. And see what kinds of things they invest in. So do some of your due diligence, and then maybe you invite them to connect. So what you're doing is you're building the relationship before you make an ask. And the ask might be, would you be willing to have a 15-minute conversation with me on Zoom? Or can I meet you for a cup of coffee if you're in town somewhere? So think about building the relationships by using a tool that is not what normally people do, and because it will grab people's attention, but do it tastefully, not spammily, if that's a word. I just made that up. So that's one way. But I do have a client, her actually, Holly, Donna McPherson, who's in our eWomen Network community. Donna has been a longtime CPA, and now she's become a profitability coach. So she's working with a lot of people who, women entrepreneurs who are wanting to look at things different in the way they do their business. So what Donna's been doing though, is by positioning herself as this profitability CPA, she's not necessarily wanting to take on accounting clients, but she's coaching people how to have financial freedom. And so she's actually gotten a lot of clients through that, through building content over time. Whereas when she first was on LinkedIn, she was really building connections. But now that she's been putting out regular, consistent content, she's actually starting to get clients through LinkedIn. So it's a sort of a little bit of an indirect answer to your question, but it's all of these things are stepping stones to get to that point. You know, I've been in the LinkedIn world since 2006, really started pushing on it in 2014, but it was at least 2 years before I started getting clients on LinkedIn, like direct leads. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So some of this, I always say LinkedIn is a slow dance. You're like, take your time, but be consistent there because it really will pay off. And a lot of people don't know this, but every one of these user interfaces has an algorithm. LinkedIn has its own, and a lot of it is, in the software. But LinkedIn prides itself on a lot of human eyes behind the algorithm. So they're looking at content, they're looking at quality, they're looking to see if you engage with other people's content. And the more they see you doing that, the more they raise you up. So it's quality over quantity on LinkedIn. And that's one of the reasons I love the platform so much. Did that answer your question, Holly?
Yes,
Okay.
that was great.
Okay.
So on the matter of quality over quantity, can you talk to us about connections versus following? And when you want to make a connection, how is it appropriate to make that connection?
Right. So connections are a two-way street. And I'm going to back up from your question, but it will make sense. So there are different ways of connecting or following someone on LinkedIn. So for years, you'd go to a person's profile, you'd see a connect button, you'd click the button, you'd send a little note, and then when they accept it, you become first level connections. Okay. So there's 3 levels of connections on LinkedIn: first, second, and third. When you become first level connections, your pre-existing first level connections on either side become automatic second level connections to the to you. So if you and I are connected, Allie, then any of your first level connections become second to me, vice versa. Okay. Third level just means you don't have any mutual connections. So if somebody reaches out to you and they says that they're a third level connection, a lot of people think that's like creepy or stalky. It just means you don't have any mutual connections. So have your own little personal filter in your brain. If somebody sends you a connection request, quickly go look at their profile. Check out their industry. Where do they live? Check their profile. Did they fill it out? Have they been active? If it says that they haven't been active on LinkedIn for 2 years, have your own filter of like, is this person make sense to be in my circle? And if they say yes, then by all means accept it. Okay. A lot of people will only accept people that they know, but then you're not taking advantage of the ripple effect of meeting more people. So kind of break out of that, knowing people, get somebody in your industry. Could this person maybe be a client? I mean, you're making a guess, but like if I get somebody who is from another country and has 200 connections and hardly anything on their profile, I am not going to connect with them. And it's not because it's a racial thing or anything like that, or a cultural thing. It's just, they don't make sense to be in my sphere of my circle. Right. Yeah. So I'm just discerning is what I'm trying to say. So don't feel like you have to connect with everybody. That's one thing. Now, a couple years ago, LinkedIn changed some settings. And so it used to be this creator mode setting, which is no longer applies. And if you turned creator mode on, then it automatically took your connect button, turned it to a follow button. So a lot of times if any of you go to my profile, you'll see a follow button. If you click it, all that means is if I post content, you might get notified that I posted something, but we're not first level connections. You have to send a connection invite to somebody to be a first level connection. And they have to accept it. Okay. So it's a two-way street. So this is one of the things, like when you're in LinkedIn and you're looking at other people's content, like other posts or things like that, you might see something in a comment of somebody that you really like, and you'll be like, oh, I'm going to go check them out. Go over to their profile, and then maybe send them a connection request because they seem like they're a cool person to know. And you can send them a connection request saying, I love the comment you left on Holly's post about such and such. I would love to be connected with you. Okay. So, always add a note. Power users on LinkedIn, because of the spam, like you mentioned, Holly, if you don't bother putting a sentence in the connection request note, if there's no note, they'll just automatically ignore it and won't take it. So put something in there. I follow your blog. Hey, I met you at a networking event. I loved the comment you made. We have 5 mutual connections. Hey, we went to the same school. Anything that just seems like it's a connection so that somebody knows you're human and that you're not a bot or a spammer, goes a long way in this world now.
I mean, really, LinkedIn could be like that connection from like being in a sorority, being, playing sports at a school, being in a conference, like, I played volleyball. So being in a conference where everybody is, maybe they didn't go to Arkansas State, but maybe they went to Louisiana Tech or something like that. And and they're the same age as me. So that could be a connection point too.
Absolutely.
And I just think there's so many ways that people connect, but just remember that just like on Facebook and Instagram, you want to connect with people. You don't want to just put a post there and then not respond or not look at somebody else's and make comments. So
exactly.
I mean,
if you choose to, you can do some fun things like, the headline underneath your name. A lot of people put their job title there. I prefer to use like a couple choice keywords that are describe the work you do. Like on my headline, it doesn't say that I'm the CEO and founder of Standing Out Online. If they scroll down, they'll see that. But I put in that I'm a LinkedIn profile coach. I'm a PR expert, blah, blah, blah. So I put in things there that they see. So Holly, you might even know this person because he's a National Life person. Do you know John Scarcella?
Yes.
Okay. So John worked with me on his LinkedIn profile when I was helping people at National Life Group, like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago. So John, when we were working on his headline, I always suggest to people, if they want to do it, put a little something quirky at the end of the lists of whatever you put. So like on mine, it says paddleboard fanatic, because that can be an icebreaker to a conversation, right? Yeah. And so when I was working with John, we were actually at the National Life home office. He said, I'm going to put in closet meteorologist. I'm like, huh? He goes, I actually grew up and I wanted to be a weatherman. He goes, and then I got into the world of insurance. So he puts on his LinkedIn profile, closet meteorologist. He ends up showing me this picture on his phone of all his little backyard weather gadgets. But he has told me when we've had follow-ups and stuff, he has had more people reach out to him on LinkedIn because that's the only place he puts that. And it's an icebreaker or an entree to a conversation. And so it's humanizing you and it's making something informal and a little more fun. So, be creative if that's fitting of your personality.
Yeah. Well, Kate, gosh, each one of these interviews we got to turn into a podcast because it's just not enough time in 30 minutes.
We've already gone through 30 minutes.
I know. Can you let our audience know how they can get in touch with you? Obviously on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn. So, linkedin.com/in Kate Payne, and it's Paine is how you spell my last name. There it is. On Instagram, and my website is Standing Out Online. And also, if for anybody who's listening to the show, if you ever want to send me an instant message or a DM through LinkedIn, I look at it all the time. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, you could just say, I saw you on the Women of Wealth show. Exactly. You must be friends with Hollywood's Gray,
Exactly.
And Allie. So that's just a great way of doing it.
Yeah. Kate, just have fun with LinkedIn. Be professional, but have fun. Don't be afraid to show your personality. Teach people something. Show how you solve a problem.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
Have a great day. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yes, very soon. Thanks, everybody.
Well, I don't know about you, but I took like a page and a half of notes, even though I've had like my one-on-one sessions with Kate before. I mean, your personal brand equals your reputation. I mean, TOMA, top of mind awareness. I wrote down all of her acronyms. Just all these different tips.
Yes. Your personal brand is your integrity. And it's funny because I recently saw her in San Diego. She was one of our speakers at eWomen. And so I was taking copious notes then, and I immediately went to my LinkedIn and I loved the little bit about, throwing something fun in there. And I put modern day tree hugger. And anyone who who knows me gets that. But yeah, so I love what Kate has to say, and I always grab something from her talks.
Well, next up, we have another powerful woman, Stephanie. Gosh, I have known Stephanie. We were pregnant at the same time. I think I mentioned that before. I mean, I'm just so excited to see where her business has come. It's been about 8 months maybe since we talked business. I did see her on the 4th of July last year in Coronado. But let's bring Stephanie on in and let's talk about her competitive advantage. Hey, Steph.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. I was listening into the last segment and it was so good. I'm like, I need to throw some fun stuff in my LinkedIn title as well. I'm fun. I can throw some fun things in there.
Oh, absolutely. Well, why don't you go ahead and share a little bit about yourself? I mean, gosh, a bio would be 30 minutes long if we read it on you, but I mean, Stephanie is just such an amazing woman, and talk to us a lot about, your position at Aristocrat as well as CEO of Her Competitive Advantage.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. Super excited to connect with everybody here on this call. So a little bit of my background, I was a collegiate athlete, played basketball at Arizona State almost 18 years ago now, so quite a long time. Spent 6 years as a stay-at-home mom. My husband was actually a college basketball coach after I graduated, and we were living the dream, right? Like, I loved it. The sports vortex is real, and so we were just living that dream, living all over the country. My youngest at the time, who was 4.5 months old, he's now 10 and totally fine. But every day was, is he going to live or die? We were being life flighted to Children's. It was really crazy. I had shingles at 25 because of the stress of it all. We were being life flighted constantly, and depending on weather, ambulance or by air. And in July, our research doctor was like, look, we don't know what this is. We thought it was lung disease, that he might have needed a lung transplant. We did a biopsy that came back negative. I think you guys need to move somewhere dry and warm, because I don't really know what another cold and flu season is going to look like with this breathing related condition. And so with that counsel, we picked up and moved across the country. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I guess I have a degree, like there's no college coaching jobs open. Let me see if I can find a job. And I remember, we were on the side of the roads, like those buildings that were off the freeways. We'd be on the side of the road with 3 young kids in the car, one with an oxygen tank, 2 other young kids, 4 and under. And I'd be like, please do not hear the cars whizzing by on the freeway right now as I'm interviewing. We ended up in Vegas, got my first role. And now it's been just over 9 years. I'm currently the global vice president at Aristocrat Gaming, which is amazing. I can't say enough good things about that organization, what they do for their people. The growth that I've been able to experience there has been so amazing. The mentors I've had has really, really helped me across my career. But as my career progressed, I recognized a couple things. One, it is nearly impossible to find and hire top female talent. Like, it is so hard. And there's a lot of systemic issues as to why this is, right? Women apply for less jobs, especially if they don't meet every single qualification. And even in my position today, if I'm ever looking at jobs, I'm like, man, I don't have that one bullet. Should I apply? Should I not? And so, I think as women, that's just a natural thing we have. And then you compound that with things like women reply less on LinkedIn to messages, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to hire and look for women, at least to be able to be in my candidate pool. And I send out messages and they reply so significantly less. And so you start compounding all these things, and it's very, very difficult to find and hire women. And when I thought about, like, what do I actually want? I'm in finance. I can teach you how to do Excel. I can teach you how to, make a forecast, do a plan, but I can't teach you how to be all in. And all these things sports taught me. And that's really where HCA, Her Competitive Advantage, came in, is I was like, what are all these women doing, right? Holly, you played sports in college. We connect on so many levels, but definitely on that one as well, being pregnant at the same time, which is the funniest thing as well. But I just wanted to start to create this space where if companies wanted to find top female talent, which, there's definite correlation between women who played sports and women who've had success in their career, companies would have a place to do that.
Yeah, I love it because, whether you're a former athlete or a current athlete, you have a place for those people, not only just a place for people to even apply for jobs now. It's just growing so fast. It's just so intriguing. The leadership roles across the industries are just the top 2% of women that are in those jobs played sports, right? So how have you been able to aim that acceleration for intriguing more women into those leadership roles?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a twofold question, right? We all hear the stat that Ernst & Young did. It was back in 2014 and has now been redone many, many times over. That essentially says that 94% of women who are in the C-suite played competitive sports and over half at the collegiate level. So there's this undeniable connection between what you learn as an athlete, especially for a female, and what you're able to deliver in business, because business has so many parallels to athletics. So I think one component is helping these women understand their superpowers, because as they're graduating, as they're early in their careers, everyone they hang out with are usually athletes. And so they don't realize that not everybody's going to be all in. Not everybody's going to be decisive. Not everybody's going to be willing to be a team player. And so when you start to recognize what differentiates you, it gives you a competitive advantage to be able to leverage as you have more opportunities, and even mentoring other people, giving them those tools as well. So I think one component is that. And then secondarily is having businesses open their mind to, I'm all about hiring the best candidate at the end of the day, right? Like, hire who is the best candidate, but give people an opportunity to have a seat at the table, to be able to interview. Like, I met with actually someone at one of the big sports organizations here in Las Vegas, and she was like, I'm so sick of going to HR and them only having one type of candidate. And I'm like, where are you sourcing them from? Where are you looking? We're not working hard enough to find these people. And so women on one side need to apply more, need to respond more on LinkedIn, need to lean into their superpower, whether that's through sports or music or whatever that is, those learnings from their childhood. And organizations need to be willing to take a shot on this potential and see, even if they can't quite articulate it yet themselves, that they can see that potential in them as well.
Yeah. Stephanie, I'm curious, are there particular sports where you see these attributes more that people are looking for in their candidates?
Yeah, I get this question actually quite often, because people are like, oh, if it's a team sport versus an individual sport, and there's different learnings across the board. But I think when you really take a step back and look at sports, and I'll give basketball analogies because I played basketball, so it's a lot easier for me to make really clear parallels. But, thinking about every scouting report we did, whether it was basketball, volleyball, track, like, you had scouting reports, you understood, you studied your competition, right? You understood the plays they were going to do, and you decided how you were going to counter those plays. And in the game, when you saw them happening in real time, or as they're setting it up, you would call it out. And so you could defend it appropriately or attack it offensively, right? And so that's literally a business case at the end of the day. Like, at the core of what it is, that's a business case. And when we as athletes start to realize that we actually have a little bit more experience than we thought, there's so much power behind that. So I don't think necessarily one sport gives you something better than another. They're all so different, but that ability to train individually and be on a team, whether you're playing solo or, in a collective group, is so powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because it's like, I think that as an athlete, you inherently have these different skills, right? Like, so I played volleyball. So every time you get blocked, that's a no, and every time you get a kill, that's a yes. And if you do that 3 times out of 10, then you're successful, right? Just like softball or baseball or whatever the case might be. But I think that we can understand that as athletes, where, like, I have women who come onto my team and they're really afraid to be in sales, right? But like, really, everybody's in sales every single day, because you're getting your kids to do what you want them to do, right? So you literally have to enroll them in that. So I think that it's really great that we can identify this, because, we have talked about that. I forget what you call it, but there's a time after an athlete graduates before they actually figure out what they're going to do. What do you call that?
The lost years. The
lost years. There you go. Yeah. That's your book title that she's going to be writing, or something like that.
Yeah.
So how do you speed up that process for these women that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the lost years essentially is, right, you've had, and anyone can go through the lost years at any point in their life, but specifically I'll hit on the sports impact. So you have a coach, a team, clear direction, really this goal that you're driving to. every single day. And all of a sudden overnight, that is completely gone. And so you have to refine yourself. You have to discover who's going to be your next coach. What are you going to do? This whole identity that you've had for so long is gone in an instant. And even if you know exactly who you want to be and what you want to do, you will go through a component of the lost years. In simple terms, like learning to eat again, right? Like the amount of calories I could consume as an athlete is significantly different than the amount of calories I can consume today. And so learning that balance and those fundamental things, like you're literally a new person again. You have to be willing to fail in such a unique way and do things that you've never done. But to your question, like the way you shorten the lost years and what we found, and I've met with almost 1,000 athletes at this point and heard all their stories, and every single one of them is the same, right? Like the identity that they've had, it's gone, all the things, and the length of the lost years is 100% dependent on how quickly you can be all in on something else. Because as an athlete, we are our best selves when we're all in on something, right? Otherwise, we're just this ball of potential sitting there, and we are not our best selves in those scenarios. When we don't have a place to adequately put our potential, our drive, etc., it becomes really difficult for us to operate. And that's where you see, people long after they're done playing still not really doing anything because they never were able to figure that out. And what we also found was the longer you're in the lost years, the harder it is to pull yourself out. So you almost need someone to rescue you or recruit you, because that feels like home, especially as a college athlete. Like you've been recruited before, it feels normal, to be able to save you from that. And Business Insider actually came out with an article that said if you graduate underemployed or unemployed, you'll remain that for over 10 years and may never find a college level job. So it actually matters what we're doing as we're graduating, and it puts us back, and it costs us a lot of money. Even if we do get a college level job later, usually it's not paying as much. And it's just a ripple effect that costs us as women a ton of money. We also did a study on our end at HCA and found that 75% of collegiate female athletes today are graduating without a job. For perspective, the national average is 4%. So that's terrible. And there's a lot of systemic barriers. We need like a whole segment just to unpack why that's going on. But HCA, we're trying to correct that from the bottom up.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about this before too, like the internship, even just for an athlete, female or male, it's hard for them to do internships because of their, their workout schedules and all that kind of stuff. And then you have like these women who may be on the cusp of like, oh, I could play longer. I'd have to move to Europe possibly, but I could play longer. And so that kind of like stretches out the time. I mean, I even have a gal right now. She played volleyball she's on our team here at Appreciation Financial. She played volleyball at the University of Oregon and then at the University of Hawaii, and she's over in Sweden right now playing, but kind of like she's on pause with her career because she's still playing volleyball. This has been a dream of hers, and luckily she has women in her life who can coach and help her get recruited for something else. You know what I mean? But not everybody has that. Allie, what were you going to ask? I think I interrupted you.
Yeah, I along those lines of, I mean, it can be terrifying. I wasn't a collegiate athlete. I played softball through high school, but I did play a club sport. I was a water skier in college.
I love that. 2 skis or 1?
Mainly 2. So I did jump, which takes 2 skis.
Yeah.
And then wakeboarding. And it's terrifying. So how do you develop these athletes to be connected with jobs that, show or they know their skills and they understand their superpowers? What does it look like in that development process?
Yeah, so we're just getting started, but we're doing a couple things. We just launched our first masterclass with Nikki Fargas. She's also on our board, president of the Las Vegas Aces. Last week, I think it's been a week. It's like every time's flying by. But essentially, that see her be her mentality is so big. And one thing that Nikki said was, and a lot of people wouldn't know, she had a ton of jobs in between graduation, coaching, or graduation and coaching, right? Like she didn't just roll out of bed after graduation at, one of the most successful coaches in the country. She tried a lot of different things during that transitionary period that were right for her at the time. But the one thing she did was she did something. And I think, we started this series on LinkedIn called Dear Athlete, but it's really dear anybody who is looking at some transition in their life, whether that's a new job, a new, having a kid, getting married, like whatever that is. I think social media has taken the journey out of life, and the journey is where the joy is, right? Like the journey is where we're built as people. All the great skills that we want are developed in the journey. They're not developed at the top of the mountain when you're there. We don't get grit, which we would all probably say we want, or kindness or empathy from not going through anything hard. And so all these skills that we truly want, we have to enjoy the journey to achieve them and to get them and to grow them. And so, I think because social media is this instant gratification, because social media doesn't show truly the grit and the journey and the pain and the hardship and how many times I've cried to my husband to say, am I doing the right thing? This is so hard. Entrepreneurship is so hard. I love my job. What am I doing? Like, it doesn't show any of that. It just shows the people at the top of the mountain. And so I think it's, as a society, when we can get to a place where we enjoy the journey, share the journey, experience the journey more, like we're going to have so much more success.
Yeah. And you mentioned it, like, we were talking to Indy about this because her and her husband do some work together as well. But, in order for us females to thrive, I've had a ton of coaches and mentors that were men,
Yeah.
And so can you talk a little bit, because sometimes I think we get in this feminist move that like, we don't acknowledge the fact that, I said it earlier, like behind every strong man is a woman, but behind every strong woman is a man, a husband that's doing what he's doing and being successful at home. Like I know your husband, he teaches your kids are homeschooled, right? So, I mean, without him, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing. So can you talk a little bit about the allies, the support that it is required for you in your life with not just Adam, but other men that are in your life that are supporting you?
Yeah, I love this question. Hector Fernandez, who was our CEO at Aristocrat, just recently took another job, but I remember him very distinctively telling me early on, and he's said it in many of in the things he's spoken on, is one of the most important decisions in your life is who you choose as your life partner. Whether that's a best friend because you never want to get married, or a spouse, or whatever the case may be, because what they do is really the biggest contributor and driver to anybody's success or detriment on the other side of things, right? And so, having someone who keeps the fort down at home is huge, right? Like this might be taboo, but I probably haven't done a load of laundry in like 4 years. And we have a family of 5, and the amount of time that I save not doing laundry is like unbelievable, right? So like foundational things like that, to him homeschooling the kids, but also like him not being afraid to push me and challenge me and refine me, like that is so special and invaluable, because he's the one who sees me at the most vulnerable, right? Like he's not refining me, seeing only, the good fluffy things at work. He sees like the good, the bad, the ugly. We'll call it out. And like, I just, ever since Hector mentioned who you choose as your life partner is so important, every day I look and I'm like, thank goodness I made a good choice, because not everyone can say that. But as far as like male allyship, even in my roles in corporates, et cetera, look, my business partner is a male who spends time in the college space. He challenges me every day. My boss is a male at work, a great mentor of mine. And so when I think about like the people who have leaned in as men, don't see it as like, oh, she's a woman, right? They're people who see the potential, who understand that I bring value to an organization and aren't afraid to lean in and give me opportunities to do such. And I would never be where I am today, and I still have a long ways to go and big dreams ahead, but like I would never even be where I am today without both men and women leaning into my career, leaning into my development, being willing to take shots on me, putting me in positions that stretch me, but also positions that are slam dunks, right? That delicate balance. And so, you know, Aristocrat has been a really phenomenal place for me to be, to experience a lot of that. I'll tell a funny story. Before Aristocrat, I was at Scientific Games, which is now Light and Wonder, in my first couple roles. I got a phone call from this guy. His name's Steve Morrison, and shout out Steve. And he called me and he's like, hey, I want you to interview for this job. And to the point of like women reply less on LinkedIn, he made a connection. He's like, hey, you're a BYU grad. I went to BYU. Like, will you just take the call type of thing? And I was like, all right. Like, if you throw something personal in there, like, I'll take the call. So he called me up. We chatted, and he was like, come on out. And it was a role in Pahrump, Nevada. And I don't know, people probably don't know the geography, but that's like an hour away. I already was having an identity crisis in the last years of like losing my stay-at-home mom status, crying on the way to work from time to time, still 2 years in. And I remember telling him, I was like, look, I don't really care what you pay me. I'm not driving to Pahrump. And he's like, well, what do you need? And I threw out some like crazy number because like, what did I care? I loved where I was at, didn't matter. And he was like, well, why do you think you deserve that? And I was like, I gave him the dumbest answer. Okay. I'm like 2 years in, it was so stupid. I won't even tell you what it is. It's so embarrassing. And he was literally like, I'm not going to go tell the CEO that. What I am going to go tell him are these 5 things, and I'll call you back. And like 5 minutes later, I got a call. He's like, done. Sign the papers. See you on Monday, basically. And he's of mine ever since, right? Like I've done consulting with him. I've, you know, bounced ideas off. I saw yesterday, and we were going back and forth. And I think that refinement and that coach, whether you've played sports or not, male or female, is so critical to your success. Like so critical.
Yeah.
Mm. That story reminded me of when India was talking about, you know, her husband calling her out and the shift of women not getting defensive in that moment, but they're doing it because they love us. So in that moment, he was protecting you. He knew that you were valuable. And so we as women can learn to surrender to men showing up for us more. I think that's really cool. So thank you for sharing that story. Are there any women that you've worked with and connected with within your industry to empower each other?
Yeah, I mean, the gaming industry is really unique. So there's an organization called Global Gaming Women, which is incredible. And we've been part of a bunch of their educational opportunities. So they essentially have an educational arm of their organization where there's different levels, foundations, all the way up through executive, and then an alumni. And a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to go to the executive one for women. It was called the W Conference. And the connections that I made there are some of my best friends in the industry. One of them actually serves on my board at HCA. And so I think what I would say about women that's so interesting, women, before we're able to trust each other, we want a background check, 12 years of work history. Like we want a reference list, 10 pages long. And men are just like, sure, I'll shoot my shot on you. Like, sure, I'll, give you an opportunity. It's just a different dynamic. And so finding those connection points with women and being vulnerable quicker, right? How do we as women become vulnerable quicker? Because what I find is women have this guard up, this defense, this perfectionism, me included, right? Like from childhood traumas or childhood experiences. And the faster we can remove that, which was what was so special about this conference, like the vulnerability was there immediately because of the things we were being asked to share, makes those connections so much stronger. And even with us knowing that, it's still difficult for us to do. So how do we find those vulnerable moments, those connection points that draw us closer to people? Because that's really what's important at the end of the day, right? Is these connections and the people we get to work with and be around.
Yeah. Well, up next, we're going to have Sandra Yancey. She's the founder of eWomen Network. And that's something that I do want to invite you to, Stephanie, because I think that there are networking opportunities, especially like you're talking about with this conference of executives and other places where you can find that, but it isn't something that comes natural. I mean, like I'll go to a Chamber of Commerce event and I get something out of that, but it's totally different than I get whenever I'm with a group of women, right?
Yeah.
So I really think that is important. It is important for us to be able to be vulnerable quicker, and also for us not to care so much what other people think too. I think, like we put on our makeup, we put on our suits or whatever for whatever, but if we're walking into a room of women, I mean, just from my experience, I always make sure my hair looks a little bit better, my eyebrows look a little bit better, because I know that somebody in the room will be judging me, and that, whether I care or not, I just know it's going to be happening, right? So I think that that's a really great point. We do need to sometimes just let down our guard and not be so dang worried about what people think when we're in those situations. So because we don't learn that through sports, for sure. We don't learn that through sports, really, because when you're on a team, you're competing against the girl next to you who might be wanting to, play that same position. So I do think that everything great that we learn from being athletes, there are some things that we do have to break down once we are getting into the workforce that may or may not serve us well, right? So we got just one question left, and I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with you. Again, we're going to have Stephanie on our podcast because there's way too much information for a 30-minute segment. Just tell us how you would promote some diversity in, business, as well as give us all of your info so people can reach out to you.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is a great way to reach out to me. Stephanie Barrett. I'm there. You can reach out via our website at joinher.com as well. My Instagram's there. We also have one for HCA as well. So definitely reach out. I do respond to my LinkedIn messages. Sometimes it's not as timely as I would like, but I definitely do respond. So thank you again so much for having me, for giving us the space to chat around these things and these important topics, because I think it's really, really important.
Absolutely. Yes. And our kids are a week apart. So Stephanie was like 20 years younger than me when she was pregnant, and she still is. But yeah, so
I'm not still pregnant, by the way.
No, she's not still pregnant, but she still is 20 years younger.
I was like, is that an announcement?
I know, but Jax, it's so fun now because when we're in Coronado for 4th of July or whatever, our kids, believe it or not, are very competitive. And so they all like to play ladder golf out in the front yard, and we have such a great time and such great family time. And I think that definitely is another connection point for us, Steph. So we definitely want to keep that up. And then we randomly run into each other at sporting events. So that's fun too.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Thanks again. Let me know. Hopefully we'll be able to connect again.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Wow. We've had so many. I mean, I am writing a page of notes for every single person that we have on. So I hope our listeners are doing the same, but definitely the lost years, talking about that. The journey is where the joy is. I mean, sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but it can if you choose to, right?
Yep. Finding or understanding your superpowers, then you can go for it, because you'll know what you're going for if you know what your superpowers are, and get vulnerable quicker. I was just at a women's group Friday, and I met with one of the girls for coffee yesterday, and she was like, you gave me the space on Friday to open up more, and I wasn't like, how were you just so quick to be vulnerable? And actually, I brought up eWomen Network because Holly, 2.5 years ago, invited me to eWomen Network, and that's when I had just gotten my license. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I barely knew what an annuity was, and yet I was going to this networking group and like trying to talk about my business. And as I met more and more women, and I realized we're all on the same path of just growing in our business, and we just want to make connections and help each other, it gave me the space to start opening up and talking. And then that trickled into other aspects of my life. So I really do. eWomen Network has a special place in my heart, and it's a great segue to bring on the CEO of eWomen Network. Holly, would you like to give an introduction to her?
Well, she's another one that I don't think 30 minutes is enough time for us to go over everything that Sandra has to pour into you. Jill, if you want to go ahead and bring Sandra in, that'd be great. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Holly. Hi, Allie.
I'm so excited that Sandra's here. As as Stephanie and the other ladies were mentioning, you know, having a great mentor and having allies, whether they're male or female, in your corner is something that you definitely want to have. And Sandra has been that for me. I just real quick, I'm going to tell my real quick eWomen story. So right before the pandemic, the last event I was at the 10X conference. So it was Grant Cardone. He was giving so much great information. One of the things that he said is, however much money you've spent on personal and professional development up to this point, take that and spend it in a year. And one of the other things that I heard while I was at that conference is, when you find your people you want to invest in and you want them to invest in you, do it at one place. Because sometimes if you have too many coaches, the message can get, you know, not the same message, and then you don't know exactly which track you're going down. So I did that back in 2020 when the pandemic hit. I went all in with Sandra. She's such a lovely woman and such a great friend and mentor and coach and everything. She can kick me in my butt when she needs to, and she can give me the biggest and most wonderful hugs as well. So Sandra, welcome. Thank
So
you.
great to be with you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I feel so honored that you invited me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So Sandra, why don't you talk a little bit just about eWomen? And, you know, I mean, you started on top of a garage, right? In a
Yeah.
garage.
Yeah, spare
Office on
bedroom.
top. Yeah.
Spare bedroom above the garage. I didn't know what I was doing, and I look back on it, and to be totally honest, Allie and Holly, I'm glad I didn't know what I was getting into, because if I did, I think I would have said, "Pass, I'll go do something else." I would have thought that all the mountains I was going to have to climb, and the obstacles I was going to have to overcome, and the detours I was going to have to take. I think I would have said, "There's just no way I could manage that, and so I'll do something else." And so there's something to be said for, I think, identifying the moonshot. Like, what is it that you really want? What does the big picture look like, right? And I think about it every time I look at the moon, because I know that I'm not that person yet. I've got a lot of growing to do to get there, but I trust that it's there. I know that it's tied to my calling and my purpose and why I'm on the planet. And when I look at the moon and I see the crescent moon, how beautiful it is, I'm just reminded that that's me. I'm the crescent right now, and it doesn't mean the rest of the moon isn't there. It's there, right? I just have to grow totally into that. But I think when you begin with the end in mind, I look back now, and it's been 25 years. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary. I can't even believe it, and I just left a meeting. I've been on this floor for 23 years. This has been my office, and we're moving. We're actually moving to the fourth floor, and I'm doubling my space. And I just met with all the interior designers that brought all the things, the flooring and the countertops and the counters and the paint and all the ideas and everything. And I was like, I think I'm planning the next 25 years. It just feels like, every time I move into something, the dream gets bigger. It's not like it moves away. It's not like it's teasing me and I can't achieve it. It's like it just shifts and it grows. And I may not be here for 25 years, but, I've got a succession plan in place for my daughter. She's 6 years into a 10-year succession plan. And we had a really scary thing that happened a year ago that could have, really, set that, plan in a completely different direction. But you can't, the lesson for me is you can't stop and wait until everything is perfect and ready. It's more about being willing and trusting that, there's going to be obstacles and disappointments and scary things along the way. And you'll figure it out.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, gosh, you've been investing in women for the last 25 years.
I have.
Did you imagine that? Well, I mean, I know that you imagine it would be this big, but now, like the new mission, right? 1 million women making $1 million in their business, right? That is a goal. When did you set that out? Because that wasn't the beginning mission.
No. You're right. It was. I've changed kind of my tagline as I've grown. The person that I was. I think let's see here. My first tagline was, proven system for women entrepreneurs worldwide. I've evolved over. So I would say this one is probably a good 12, 15 years in, 12, 14 years, something like that. And I just felt like, I think it was about the time that I started working with Ken Kragen. And he told me that it was easier to do the impossible than it was to do the possible. And I was like, "Why do you think that?" And he said, "Because everybody's doing what's possible. It's crowded space. You can't stand out. You can't be seen. You have to go do, what is seemingly the impossible." And he talked to me about his story of, being the one to put together the whole "We Are the World" song. And now there's a Netflix movie called The Greatest Night in Pop. And Ken Kragen was the thread that pulled it all together. He was the most, it's like a Hollywood legend in the music industry. He was managing 48% of all the number one music artists in the world, and from Kenny Rogers to Dolly Parton to Trisha Yearwood to the Bee Gees in their heyday to Lionel Richie when he left, and Bruce Springsteen and the whole bit. And when Harry Belafonte went over to Africa and saw the kids, starving, he couldn't unsee it. He wanted to do something, and he thought, "Who's the most connected, powerful woman or man that really anybody that really knows, and can pull something together?" And he went to Ken Kragen, and Ken knew, of course, Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, the whole bit, and the rest is history, and then he did the largest humanitarian effort ever in the history of the country at the time, called Hands Across America. And so what he did for me is he didn't just tell me you can do the impossible, he demonstrated to me that he had done it. And, what he said was that everybody's so afraid of the impossible. And the truth is, when you think about it, if there's a line between what's possible and what's impossible, you just have to step into it.
Yeah.
You don't have to leap over here. You could just step into it. And he taught me to step into what seems like the impossible. And it's changed my life. It's changed my life. It's changed everything for me. And it's really allowed me to rally in big ways. And we are exponentially changing, getting women over the $1 million mark. I mean, I've worked with women who have said to me, she said, Patty was saying I was making $27,000 a year when I worked with you. I was trying to think about, like, just how can I pay my bills? Like, I'm not even paying my bills. And now she's doing millions, and now we're working on packaging that business so that she's ready to sell it, and she's got a vision for the next thing she wants to do. And it's so exciting to me to work with women who are saying, "I didn't think that I could do that." It felt so pie in the sky. It seemed so impossible. It felt almost silly to think that I could make $1 million. And Sandra, you showed me how, and here I am celebrating it. I know another woman, Jane, who, when I started working with her, she was leaving being a teacher, and she wanted to become a realtor. And 5 years later, she's gone from being a realtor to building $1 million business. You know how many realtors there are and how few of them make $1 million, and she's
Yes.
one of them. And now building a coaching business around how to teach other realtors how to do that. I mean, it's just what happens when, money isn't a goal, money is a tool. I don't believe that money actually changes people. I believe what money does is it makes them more of who they are. And when you make money, you now can hire people in their zone of genius to do the things that allow you to stay in your own zone of genius that in some ways you have no business doing, which allows you to now impact more people, right? So it's about creating more impact with more people that allows them to go out and live their calling and create an impact. And the ripple effect of what that does just shows you that money is a tool to create so much greatness in so many people, to create so much change, to create so much impact. I mean, I live in a nice house, but I've lived in my house for 20 years. It's not for me about, I can live in a much more grand house. That's not what it's about for me. It's about, you know, making more of an impact. And that impact just changes people's lives. And that's the most fulfilling thing for me ever. And I'm going to do it exponentially. I mean, we're going to double, if not triple, the amount of women we've gotten over the $1 million mark this year. And I've got all these incredible managing directors who have members who have crossed the $1 million mark. And we're going to just continue proving that what's impossible is really possible. It's just a
Mhm.
mindset shift.
Yeah. And Holly and I both, well, I share in our podcast that, I thought having money was like I equated that to not being a good person.
Yeah.
And it was then when I realized that money is a tool. And if I have more money, I can give myself away more. I can
Yeah.
donate more. I can do more. And
I'm-
Holly talks about, building her business so that she can go if there's a natural disaster and she can go at any minute and drop what she's doing to go serve people. And
Yes.
so I really like
Yes.
that. It's just a reminder. And you laughed at your old slogan for eWomen, but that was also a testament of like you just did it. You were willing to start and it wasn't perfect and
Yeah.
it's changed. And what we're doing now is going to evolve and we're just willing to surrender to not being perfect. And
Yeah.
so thank you
So
for the
about getting going, and taking imperfect action. I think sometimes this whole notion of perfectionism, and I believe it's more of a women's issue than men's. I'm not saying men don't have a perfect, mentality, but really, I think the standard should be excellence and exceptional, right? And I sometimes think perfectionism is a hidden way of self-sabotage, of let me not take a step because I might be judged because it might not be good enough. And what I have learned is that it is in the imperfect action that, you make the strides. And I actually have a quote next to my, I'm going to stand up and go over here so you could just see it's bent. It's literally on a piece of paper. I just want you to see this. It's curved because it's been hanging for so long. It's on a piece of tape. And it's a
Love it.
Steve Jobs quote. And I read it every day. And it says, sometimes when you innovate, you make mistakes. It is best to admit them quickly, get on to improving your other innovations. And I love this. And I just printed it. I saw it and I printed it off on a piece of paper. I look at it every day. And it really just is a reminder to give myself permission to just get going and keep going. And success is all about iteration anyway. I mean, even if you're on the right track, you're going to get run over if you just sit there. There's just so many changes that are going on. So you've got to constantly be open to, making things better and finding ways to improve the little things incrementally add up to really big things over time.
Yeah. So Sandra, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I know that what works best, at least to my experience of you, is what works best is just letting you know some things I'd like you to cover and then just letting you go. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You can answer them in any order or not at all if you want to go down a different direction.
All right.
So obviously, eWomen Network, how can women use networking as a strategic tool, to build their business? What are some common mistakes women make when they're trying to grow their wealth in their business? And what strategies do you have for women that are transitioning from employee to entrepreneur?
Okay. So I'm going to start out with, I think I can hit the first 2 pretty quickly. And it ties into the third one as well. I think the most important thing is that all business is about relationships, period. I just happened to decide to build a relationship business. But what I've learned is all businesses are about relationships. You can't get anything done unless you're able to work with and through people. Now, not all relationships are the same. And so I think about networking kind of as dropping a pebble in a lake, and then there's this ripple effect. And so understanding that there's circles of relationships. And what most people don't understand is sometimes as you get closer to the center, the circle actually contracts, the circle actually gets a little bit smaller, but the value can actually expand and magnified. And those critical relationships in the center, those are your high value relationships. That doesn't mean that the other levels of your network isn't valuable. They just have different purposes. But it's important to understand that. I think the greater your success accelerates the most when you align yourself with those high value relationships. It's the power of proximity. Success leaves clues, period. Success leaves clues. And in my opinion, you need to understand that you are a relationship away from massive acceleration. And when you are around people who have been, 10 to 100 times more successful than you, they will help you accelerate so fast they can turn decades into days, literally decades into days. They can accelerate your results. It's not, for me, it's not about getting around them for the inspiration. I'm not interested in being around people that are just motivators. I mean, I can go get an IV and a B12 shot and, I'm good to go kind of thing. But I do think that energy is contagious. I think that there is something to that. But I do think that, aligning yourself, and I say this, I've written what I call a check for speed. I've paid $150,000 for to be coached for a year. And I've made over $1 million in 6 months as a result of that investment because I was energized. I felt a tremendous amount of accountability because I put that much money on the line. So I wasn't going to waste it. And I felt like I really wanted to lean in and learn what others were doing and find a way to adopt it. And I wanted to get busy and I wanted to implement something with imperfect action. And literally, attended my first mastermind in that group in October, launched something in December, and then again in March. So that'd be April, May, January, April, January, February, March. So in 6 months, I had made over $1 million in a $150,000 investment. I don't think I could have done that hanging around people that were at my same space. And I think you mentioned it, you have to be careful who you're taking advice from because, advice is like elbows, everybody's got two. And I don't take advice from people who have not been where I'm going.
Yeah.
I just not going to do that. Now, those people are still valuable to me because I hear what their problems are. Ooh, that's an idea on something that I might need to serve with a product. These are the people that I might hire to help me with some of the things that I have now the money to outsource. These are the potential people that could be the customers of the product or service that I'm offering. So still very high value. But you have to understand that you have to have those high value relationships and they can change your life. They can make the strategic introductions. They can give you the ideas. They can tell you where the landmines are. They can give you the encouragement, remind you to jump. It's time, go. You've got rigor mortis. You're stuck in over planning and overthinking it, right? Go. And I actually kind of give you the nudge and then be there if something's not going right so that you can make, those mid-course corrections and then, celebrate you and let you know you had it in you all the time. You just, had to be willing to go for it.
Yeah. What about those people that are employees right now and they want to make that jump over to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think, and I did that, so I was one of those people, right? And so I think, if you can, start to understand what being an entrepreneur is, because it is completely different than being an employee. And I don't think it's for everyone. So let me be honest about that too. But there are so many great networking groups that you can join and you can attend either on your lunch hour or in the evening. Be willing to pay for it. It's a very different mentality because in corporate America, we often think, oh, if I'm going to do something, my boss is going to pay for it. So, one of the first signs of being an entrepreneur is you got to be willing to invest invest in yourself, right? So, it's a lunch hour, or, maybe it's PTO time, or it's an evening event, but really, showing up and asking some very strategic questions, knowing what you now know, what would you do differently? What are the first 3 things that you wish you would have done, or you did, that you're glad that you did, in order to, really launch your business? What was in your blind spot that is now clearer to you, as a result of, having made the jump from being an employee into being an entrepreneur? I mean, I would ask some really juicy questions and then sit back and ask myself, is this really what I want for me? Right. And then the bigger question is, I mean, there's a lot of people that are becoming unemployed right now. And I think some of them could be like, I don't ever want this to happen to me again. I'm going to go make it for myself. But just understand that it's not about just having a great product or service. It's really about understanding the problem. I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, it's not about what you're offering. It's more about what problem are you solving. So getting really clear about how you change people's lives. What is the transformation that you're going to make as a result of the product or service that you're offering? Because that's what people buy. And secondly, then they buy your story. So know what your story is, know how you have overcome that challenge, because people are buying your wisdom, right? If all it took was knowledge, we all have access to that. It's called Google. We can all Google whatever we want. It's served up a gazillion of things. And if that's all it took, I promise you, all of us, including me, would be more successful. But it isn't that, it's wisdom. And wisdom is what you're buying. What have you learned as a result of what you've done that you can give me the shortcut, you can give me the ahas, you can give me the guidance, you can point me in the direction, you can give me the map, you can tell me avoid that landmine. That's what you're buying, along with the transformation that you're seeking. And your product or service must address that. Or you're just developing a product or service that nobody wants.
Yeah.
Very disappointing.
We just had our San Diego chapter A&E this last week, and Barbara actually quoted you with the wisdom versus knowledge, and everyone loved that.
Yeah.
It's
true, right?
It was a light bulb moment of, yeah, we can Google, we have AI. There's so much knowledge available now for free.
And I love AI, but AI isn't intended to replace you, right? It's intended to amplify you. You have to remember when you're using AI, and I love it. I love AI, don't get me wrong. But you have to remember that, most importantly, I think, when I'm looking for what I call intentional influence, right, which is very different than just being an influencer. It's really not about being loud. It's about asking yourself, what is it that I want to be remembered for? Right? That's what I ask myself all the time. And I want to make sure that when I'm putting anything out there, that it is in alignment, that I'm showing up as the person I want to be remembered for. And then I want to use AI as a way to amplify that. And then once I take that amplification, I want to make sure that I'm matching it, that I'm coming together with this great AI tool, but I'm also hyper personalizing it so that people know it's me. Because I think people are skeptical about who they're. That's why I mean, I'm noticing that, live events are. I mean, they are, talk about amplification. In my 25 years, of running eWomen Network, I haven't seen live events like they are right now. I mean, I just got back at 1:00 in the morning. I was in Calabasas and Orange County the last couple of days. Unbelievable how big these events are, how exciting. But I think it's because people are wanting to, take what they're seeing online, they want to match it, right, with this hyper personalization of, is that person, what I'm reading about, what I'm getting in the email, what I'm seeing on the, feed, right? And that's why I think video is so important. That's got to be you. I think you have to make sure that you are showing up in a big way. And I think the people that really learn to do that are going to be the ones that are really going to stand out.
Yeah.
So what kind of challenges do you see a lot of people? You had mentioned, people are losing their jobs right now. They may start to think about running their own business. What are some challenges you see, or what maybe the top 3 challenges you see when people are just new and starting to build a business?
So, it's lonely. and nobody makes it alone. There's no one that I know that has run, like a multi-million dollar global business like myself that has ever made it alone. B, you have to understand that you have to approach your business as a CEO and not a business owner. When you approach your business as a business owner, you become the 95% that ultimately burn out. I mean, you just run, it just runs its course on you. So going back to what is the big goal, understanding what that moonshot is. I always call it the moonshot, right? What is the big goal? You have to know what it is you're really going for, because that becomes the fuel for you. And then you reverse engineer from there. So, getting really clear on what that is, you have to develop the brand that attracts your right fit client. So that's 2 elements. One is, what is your brand, right? And so how are you going to show up in a way that attracts the people that you want to work with, that are going to value you, that, are going to appreciate what you have to offer and not always ask you for discounts or complain and that kind of thing. So who is that right fit client, right? What is it that's keeping them up at night? What are they trying to conquer? What is the thing that you offer that's going to make them feel like, that's the answer to this next step, kind of thing? So how do they show up? Where are they showing up? How do they speak? Are you adapting to the way your customer buys? And then is your brand a reflection of that? Those are kind of the big things, because otherwise people are going to pass you by real quickly. And we believe in the languaging, how, when you're welcoming them on the video, where you're giving them the opportunity to talk to you, you're giving them some wisdom. Are you doing it in a way that's fitting that real right fit client for you? And selling the way your customer buys.
Yeah. So we had 30 minutes set aside, and believe it or not, we're like there. But I have one more question. So do you have a couple minutes to go over?
Sure.
Okay. So
for you, Holly.
oh my gosh, I love you so much. We're gonna be in Africa.
I know. I'm counting the days. But first, I got to have a grandbaby on the Tuesday.
Oh, on Tuesday. Okay, she's
Tuesday.
having him on Tuesday. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Well, we'll be praying for you guys.
Thank you.
All right. I know the reason why I think this might go over is because I think I know some of the answer, but I don't know all of it. So, tomorrow's Women's Day, right? And we've been talking about the disparity between men and women, and when equal rights will happen and all that kind of stuff, right? Even though we have equal rights, sometimes it quite doesn't feel like it for some people. Anyway, we don't always talk about the role that men play in this, right? And I know you have some incredible mentors. You have an incredible husband who you're in business with. Can you talk a little bit just about how men are going to play a role in the advancement of women, and how we can use those allies to accelerate action and invest in women?
So let me just say this. There are a lot of women out there that don't support women. Let's just get real. Okay? And there's going to be men out there that aren't going to support women. And your job is to get out there and meet the people and find your tribe that really matches your vibe. And the good news is there are tons of women that support women, and there's tons of men that support women. And I'm all about, I'm very pro-woman, but I'm not anti-male. And my business is for women, and yet we have tons of men that are members that serve great products and services that help women accelerate their business. And I am a person that just looks for really great people. It's just like money. Money doesn't change you; it amplifies who you are. And when you are a good person, you're going to do really good things with the money that you make. And the same is true with men. So I just happen to lean in. I ask great questions. I get good vibes. And I develop relationships with great men like I develop relationships with great women. the vertebrae, the backbone of my business as I stand tall in front of whatever audience I am is a combination of phenomenal women and really great men as well. And so you're never going to hear me put down men because I don't think you need to put down people in order to elevate yourself. I believe there's greatness in both, and I'm on a mission to find exactly who they are and create alignment and even make an investment in learning from the people that can help me know where I'm going and are willing to share what it is they have to help me get there.
Well, thank you so much, Sandra. Boom, mic drop. Let's tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, it's eWomenNetwork.com. Quite simply, that's our website. And I'm everywhere. I'm on Instagram, of course, Sandra Yancey. I'm on LinkedIn. It's Sandra Yancey EWN. Those probably are the primary ways. I'm on Facebook as well. It's Sandra Yancey EWN. I'd love to connect with you. Come and say hello to me. And here's the neat thing about me is that all the responses that you get on my social media, yeah, I have time. I don't need more minutes. I master the minutes that I have, and that's me responding to you personally.
I know. I love that about you, Sandra. Thank you so much for taking your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
I
Holly
cannot
and Allie.
wait to see your little grandbaby next week.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll have some great pictures and then also share some time with you later this month in
Can't
Africa.
wait. Can't wait.
Looking
Okay.
forward to
All
it.
right. Take
Thank
care,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
We are going to take a quick break.
3 minutes.
3-minute break, and then we're gonna just take apart the day and talk about how each speaker went and all the nuggets that we got.
And what is next? So hang tight. If you need to take a break, do so. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
All right, welcome back. So, oh my gosh, I feel like we had a theme. There was a theme of your personal brand being authentic, and that we don't hate men. What do you think, Holly? Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. We love men, apparently. I mean, I just thought it was great the way that everybody talked about the men in their life and how they support them and how they really just build them up for success.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was kind of interesting, because we did this event for International Women's Day, and I love that we also encapsulated that we need the men in our lives. However great women are, we're not supposed to be the one and only rulers of the world, as much as Beyonce says. But yeah, it was really refreshing to hear all of the different perspectives of the women and just different things that are going on in everyone's life. Um, yeah, I'm very excited to have a lot of our guests on and get to deep dive into each of their topics a little bit more. I feel like I could have had an hour, hour and a half of conversation with all these women. Holly, what did you take away from all of them?
Obviously, the authenticity that we need to bring forth in order to, bring women closer to that mark. But before I really wrap up the day, there are a couple things that I would like to share about how we can get more equity. Several of the guests that we had talked about some of the systemic problems and social or cultural change that need to happen. But let me tell you the three areas that are really the deciding factor on how we will be there as women to be more equal in pay. So the first one is closing the pay gap, right? Women still earn less than men on average for the same work. So Stephanie talked a little bit about addressing that, in having more women answer their LinkedIn, more transparency, stronger policies within the business, and then accountability as well. And then the second thing is closing that gap in leadership. Women are still very underrepresented, in executive roles, not only in the boardroom, but also politically. More mentorship, sponsorship, and leadership opportunities are needed in order for this change to happen. And then business. What did you want to weigh in there?
No, I'm keep on going. You're on a roll.
Okay. I had to change screens real quick, so I'm not seeing everything that you guys are seeing right now. Anyway, and then finally is business opportunities. More businesses that are owned by women and more education funding opportunities. And really, women entrepreneurs receive significantly less venture capital. And I don't think it's because it's not out there. I think it's because we don't ask. And so it was a common question throughout our guests on how could women get more resources for their business financially. Talena talked about that, as well as India, and also having more balance, finding partners or people in your life that can support you at home. Stephanie was talking about how her husband does their laundry. So does mine, and apparently I have a friend who came out to visit me a couple years ago, and since then her husband now does his laundry too. So it's just little things that can help you free up some time in your day. And if you're truly in partnership and you're talking to your partner about these things, you can make it so much easier in your home life. Sandra usually talks about doing only the things that you can do. There's things in my business that only I can do. Bobby can't do them. Same with him. There's things in his business that only he can do that I can't do. So we need to be able to support each other in those areas. And then really just finding those women to surround yourself with, and men that support you, that help you see the best in you, get vulnerable sooner with them, is a way to really look at your relationships. And for me and my relationship with Bobby, one time he put it in such simple terms. We were having an argument about something, and this was early on in our marriage. Maybe we'd been married a couple years. I don't remember what the fight was about, but I do remember the response. He said to me, "If you started acting like I was your teammate instead of your opponent, we would have so much more fun and joy in our marriage." And he was right. you know, like taking out those defenses, like India was talking about, when somebody, you know, even it could be not their spouse, it could be your kid, it could be a friend, it could be a parent. If they say something, you could take it one of two ways. You could take it as if they're on your team and they're giving you some feedback, or you can take it as they're your opponent and that you have to be offended by it or defensive about it. So I really think that reframing that is something that I'm going to continue to work on. Maybe not so much at home. I think we have that dialed in pretty good. However, I do work with a lot of men in our office. So maybe that's something I can work on there. And I'll let you guys know next year how it went for me.
Well, and also, we talked a little bit about women not being competitive of other women and just in lifting each other up. And I think that defensive goes into that too. You know, even if someone's doing the exact same thing as you, if, for instance, if someone's an insurance agent and I meet them, but maybe they can serve someone that I can't, or maybe they know something that I don't, and we can learn from each other and grow from each other instead of being competitive. I mean, we can also talk politically and we can just bring ourselves together. And if you actually listen to someone, instead of thinking about how you're going to rebuttal, I think our world would be kind of like your relationship, Holly. You know,
Yes.
if we could all be teammates.
And of course, we're going to have different opinions on things. You know, everybody's going to have different opinion on things, but it's how you take it. You can take it and you can listen and you can take it with understanding, or you can take it with that defensiveness that we talked about. So yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that I would love to see in my lifetime is that here in the United States, we do start building more women up. I think one of the things that happened for me as a result of starting Women of Wealth 10 years ago is that I have looked at women not as my competitor, but more as my sister, and how can I serve them? How can I support them more than, you know, they've got it in for me or something like that. I can't say that I'm 100% of the time, because nobody's that good, only one. And we're not going to talk about that on this show. So, you know, I think that we just really need to know that everybody's human, people make mistakes, and we also make great and awesome strides forward. And that's what we need to focus on.
I wanted to read something off of the IWD International Women's Day.com, just in the spirit of accelerating action. So they give a lot of bullet points of where we could accelerate action. So I'm just going to read a few. So forging women's economic empowerment. I mean, that goes along the lines of getting paid the same as men. We talked about recruiting, retaining, and developing diverse talent, supporting women and girls into leadership, business and STEM. I thought something that was interesting on this list was helping women and girls make informed decisions about their health. And then also involving women and girls in sustainable agriculture and food security. That's something the informed decisions about health and the agriculture and food security, like never even crossed my mind. But we do have, I mean, even in the USA, we have places where it's hard to get quality food. And so giving healthy food to people who may not have access to that. And then also giving women and girls access to quality education and training. And then it talks about sports, giving them the opportunity to achieve sports and also creative artistic talent. So I just wanted to share a few of those things because we had touched on a few of them. And I think it's really cool that we had Stephanie specifically talk about sports, and you talked about the agent that's on our team, because that's what I was thinking about, of how hard. And I know people who I've gone to college with who were athletes too, and it's like the scary like abyss of like the career world of, okay, now what? I mean, even after high school, I just went, like, looking back on it, I don't know if I would have gone to college if I didn't feel like I had to, just because that's what you do. But I didn't know what was next. I had played softball for 12 years. I started as a 5-year-old, and that's what I knew. And so then going to college and not doing that, I'm like, what do I do? I just study all the time. And like, and then it was, what do I even want to study? And I'm figuring it out in college. So I do kind of relate to the athletes, but again, that's a totally different, now you're a full grown adult.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't had opportunities for internships and things like that because your schedule and your diet was created for you. So I really appreciated having Stephanie on our podcast today.
Yeah, and it actually is a really great perspective for me. And you know, Jill might have this as well. I know she's off camera, but Jill is our VP of marketing for Women of Wealth. And you know, one of the things that happened when I was growing up playing sports, which is different now, I'm watching these athletes' journeys, and it's totally different. Is I played 3 sports in college. I mean, in high school, I played 2 sports in college, but I also worked in order for me to play club softball and club, you know, travel softball and club volleyball. I worked. I had to help pay for that. And today it seems like a lot of athletes don't have the time to work. A lot of even, you know, girls and boys, they don't start driving when they're 16. Like, I can't even imagine that. You know, I can't even imagine that I wouldn't have gotten that was like part of my independence, was being able to drive, you know? And so with the social media, with the internet and technology and all the great advancements we have, there are some things that now kids don't experience because they don't have to, right? Because they have a cell phone in their pocket, you know, and there's a lot of great things that they get to experience because of that. But there's also some things that they don't experience. And one of them, you know, some kids aren't getting their license when they're 16. It's not like they're waiting at the DMV anymore to get that. So, you know, I think those of us that are in my generation, it's easy for us to give our kids everything that we can. But remember, you know, we had several people talk about the journey and talk about the challenges and persevering. You know, the joy is in the journey, Stephanie said, you know, and it doesn't life doesn't come easy. So we may want to, I'm talking to myself here with my privileged child that can fly on his own. He's been in first class more times than I have probably. And, you know, I really need to keep that in mind as I'm raising this child, to have some opportunities for him to have to, you know, work hard in areas. So I think it's great. I think we had such a great show. I could go on and on, but I won't do that today because, you know, we have been sitting here for almost 3.5 hours. So you want to wrap up? Do you have anything to wrap up?
I did, and I totally forgot. That's my brain lately. So no, I really enjoyed today, and I'm really looking forward to having more discussions on accelerating action for women.
And I'm just going to leave you guys with my favorite, I don't know if you want to call it a poem. It was in Marianne Williamson's Return to Love, and it is Our Deepest Fear. And that made me, India, I think, is the one who made me think about this. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. That's the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So please take that on your way. Have a great International Women's Day. And remember, if you're looking for more content, more podcasts, and more information, follow us on our YouTube channel and check us out at womenofwealth.vip.